Well, it's 3:30, so why don't we go ahead and get the meeting started. Yvette, if we could have a call to order and roll call, please. Oh, I'm doing the call to order. Yeah, roll call, please.
Commissioner Burling, Commissioner Brzezowski.
Here.
Commissioner Mickey.
Here.
Chair Myers.
Here.
Commissioner Sowers.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, let's stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. We'll begin our meeting with public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comments shall be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by the commission. Matters not appearing on commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting, but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Persons are not required to give their names, but it is helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. So I'll look to chambers first. If there's anyone in chambers that would like to make a public appearance, please approach.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Bill Kerr. I'm with the Leadership Carmel Program 2023. And I want to thank all of you for the outstanding input and the support that we had to our project. We recently had a very successful ribbon cutting with the mayor and with Bob and others. And the public seems to really like the park and the enhancements that we put in working with Public Works. And I just want to thank all of you for your role in that.
Thanks, Bill. I'm still waiting to see one of those owls or falcons perched, but I know I'm going to get them one of these times.
Good afternoon, Commission. I'm Dale Burns, speaking as both a resident and president of Carmel Cares. And I'd first like to thank Bill Kerr, who's one of our volunteers and drives a gator on weekends. He's helping to keep plants looking fresh. First, as I promised last month, I'm going to read another poem from Dora Hagemeyer's 1947 book, The White Sands of Carmel. Today I'm going to read the poem the book is titled after, The White Sands of Carmel. The song of this bay is unending. Its music does not lean on time. It flows completed, full without beginning, varied with cross rhythms and subtle rhyme. There is a silence too in this white sand, unbroken by all sound. To hear it, listen beyond beauty. Stand facing seaward, light of breathing, weightless as the wind. Let it invade you. There is something ultimate in this white and azure, in this sea and sand embrace. Infinitude is one with purity. This is no ordinary place. Jewels are here for the seeking, bright bits of underwater parquetry, shells with their delicate veins, sea fern and starfish of curious design. 1,000 footsteps summered in these dunes are blotted out. No trace of them remains. Winter lies pure of line. We know who love this shore with more than native love. It is our own. It waits. The blue tide's flow is free today as ever and forever. The sand lies salt white to the water's edge. Thank you. Protecting Carmel Beach and the Marine Sanctuary is a subject that's being covered in a later section. However, the challenge of protecting our beach doesn't start on the sand. When most roads are on hillsides that lead to the beach, it starts throughout the village. Carmel Cares continues to build its pickup posse and ancillary programs such as Keep America Beautiful cigarette litter prevention program. During our recent meetings with the leadership of the Marine Sanctuary Organization, they were very impressed with our holistic view of the problem and solution. And we agreed to have follow-up meetings to share our progress, to develop best practices, and to partner with them on their upcoming research projects. This morning, we started rolling out the new receptacles, which have the goal of capturing at least 80% of cigarette butts before they hit the ground, and recycling 100% of all cigarette butts we find. All of this is part of our goal to make Carmel a litter-free community. I didn't bring a sample today because the first is installed out front this morning. I don't know if you saw it coming in, but if you could look at it on your way out, I'd like that. We're also excited to be part of a new collaborative program to make sure the village's young trees are properly looked after, starting with watering, or making sure they're watered. We're going to be working with Public Works, the forestry team, and Friends of Carmel Forest, and Justin's in charge of that program. We're looking forward to working with them on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dale. Anyone else from Chambers? Doesn't look like it. Then we'll look to online, and I see that Ramey, you've got your hand up. Yvette, we'll let Ramey in there. Okay. I think you're on mute there, Amy. Oh, there you go.
Hey, I guess we're not allowed to be seen anymore online.
Yep, sorry about that.
No worries. That's okay. Ramey Allard, representing Friends of Carmel Forest. First of all, I want to thank Justin for facilitating a meeting regarding the watering. We are partnering with the city on that, with Friends of Carmel Forest and Carmel Cares. The meeting was very, very productive, and we all have our tasks, and I'm looking forward to helping with that. The next thing I'd like to say is I wanted to announce a program that the Friends of Carmel Forest is bringing to Carmel at the Sunset Center this Saturday. It's called a tree care presentation about why trees fall. And it's going to be Saturday, the 14th from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. in Carpenter Hall. And we have 3 local board certified master arborists that are going to be presenting. One of those arborists is a consulting arborist. And we are going to be speaking on the topics of strength, structure, and roots of trees, the reasons for trees failure or falling, and some symptoms that homeowners can take home and look for in their own trees, in their own properties. And at the end of it, there will be a 30-minute kind of practical demonstration out in the courtyard at the Sunset Center, kind of a walkthrough, talk about pointing out actual things with trees there. And we just hope that you commissioners, as well as the Public Works staff and the Forestry Division, can support this program and come and see what we have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramey. So when are you going to be simulating trees falling? I think I did something like that in camp when I was a kid. I was trusting that I'd be caught. All right, fair enough. Let's see. Anyone else online that would care to make a public appearance? Doesn't appear so I'll go ahead and close public appearances and then request announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 for today. One is that we have the annual Halloween parade. It will be Tuesday, October 31st at 4:30. Leslie Fenton on Community Activities Department sent all of the commissioners an email a couple months ago about signing up to be, if you want to have your own truck or car or something, or participate or walk, however you want to do it. So if you would like to participate, you're encouraged to participate. Please give Leslie a call. Her number is 620-2038. 620-2038. The other thing I have is we do have a pretty full agenda today, so we postponed this until next month, but wanted to just give you a quick introduction of this item. The Forest and Beach Commission bylaws. So the bylaws say every year the commission will review and update the bylaws. Well, the last time we did that was the year 2002. So we're a little bit behind schedule, but it's not better late than never. So one of the things that we're going to be proposing when we introduce the bylaws next month is to, like we just did, where you had to gavel in first, then go on the tour inspection, and then come back in and gavel in again. So one thing we could suggest is that do the tour of inspection, come here and gavel in once. So that would be one little slight potential upgrade that we had talked about in a couple months ago. As we go through today's meeting, think about, or maybe sidebar some notes like, gosh, if this, here's maybe a procedural thing we could do to make meetings better, okay? So just kind of start thinking about it. We'll go through our agenda today. Next month, we'll introduce, here's the bylaws, let's go over it, some ideas for suggestion, and then that's a second or possibly a third meeting, we'll recommend that you adopt the final version. Okay, but today might be a good to start thinking about it. And that's all my announcements.
Thanks.
Can you email us the bylaws after this meeting?
We certainly can.
Probably like a recess with milk and cookies. That'd be nice. Halfway through. And for the Halloween parade, by the way, I have a garage full of costumes if anyone wants to do this, so we can get together and talk about it. All right, that's it with announcements. Then let's go on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and/or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. Today, we have 3 items on the agenda, on the consent agenda, that is, the September 7th, 2023 special meeting minutes, the September 14th, 2023 meeting minutes, and the receipt of an executive summary for the Shoreline and Beach Change Analysis Task 2, which is part of the coastal engineering study. Is there a motion or discussion?
You might want to open up for the public if they have anyone wants to pull an item.
I move we consent the 3 items.
We have a motion to approve. I will just ask briefly that if there's anyone from the public or online that would like any item in particular pulled, that's the opportunity right now. Okay, I don't see that. We do have a motion on the table, and we have a second.
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Okay, so then let's get into the meat of today. We'll begin with public hearings. And the first is the consideration of the removal of 7 moderately significant coast live oak trees, 2 non-significant coast live oak trees, and 1 non-significant tea tree for construction purposes at Santa Fe Street, 3 southwest of Mountain View Avenue. Turn that over to the forester.
Hi, okay. Thank you, JC. So the background on this is the applicant, Mr. Alan Lehman, submitted a tree removal permit for 10 trees on 8 on private property and 2 on city property as part of a development packet that you guys had previously seen in 2022. But at the time, the property in question was part of a larger property that has now been subdivided, and this is its own lot of record. So what we're talking about now is a new plan to build a garage, a home, and an ADU, and it's going to take out 10 trees, 8 on the property and 2 in the public right-of-way. Our recommendation is to approve this, contingent on the approval of the design study. The new lot of record is a 4,000 square foot lot, and the recommended density is 3 upper canopy, 1 lower canopy. At the time, as of now, the site has 17 lower canopy trees. So after the proposed removals, there will be 9 lower canopy trees. No uppers, but there will still be 9 trees. Our recommended replanting, if the project is to go forward and the trees are removed, would be 1 upper canopy tree on site and 1 in the public right-of-way, because the area is lacking in upper canopy trees. Several fell over in large storms, and 1 was removed.
Okay, thank you, Justin. From the commission, are there any questions about what was just presented before we look to the applicant?
So just to be clear, the forester is recommending the removal of the trees pending the
Approved design study.
approved design?
Yes.
Okay,
That it be tied to the building permit.
correct.
Are there any other questions or clarification? Justin, on the removal of such, how many are on the public property?
2.
2, thank you. Got it. Nothing further. Is the applicant here, and would he or she care to step up?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Alan Lehman, and I am the designer on the project. This is a really tough site to work with in Carmel because of the street frontage and the wall of trees that was there. And so the goal, in studying the project from the very start, was to try and minimize the amount of trees that we would have to remove from the street, and in order to just create a driveway across in order to enter a garage. As you saw on site, perhaps the most ideal spot is dead center of the lot. And that would make for a very odd configuration for a house to have the garage be directly at the center point of the house. So therefore, offsetting it in the direction we chose minimize the amount of trees that needed to be removed. There was no place that we would not have to remove trees in order to place a driveway and garage at that house. I'm struggling to just park to go visit the site. The other aspect of the siting of the house that studied in this design was the neighbor to the south has their house fairly close to the lot. And so we wanted to kind of move the house away from their house in order to keep that open space. So just kind of like, studying the houses on each side in order to not crowd one of the houses. And so that was one of the reasons the house is primarily sited to the north side of the lot, to open up the south side in order to preserve those trees which were lower, and they will still allow for solar panels on the second story, which are critical. I feel a critical item to not design a house in a way that we can utilize the exception to putting rooftop solar in, because I'm a big proponent of getting rooftop solar on every house in the country. We can tackle our energy crisis locally, and so each house I design, I want to make sure that it is set up as well as possible for that to happen, and not design in a kind of a failing, a point of failure for the house, that there are this grove of trees that would then block the solar collection. Do I ask for questions at this time?
Are you finished making your statement?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lehman?
I have a question because I mean, considering the changes that have been going on with these properties over the last, year and a half, and again, it seems to me as we've gotten some feedback from neighbors that the transparency about what's been going on with the properties has been a little bit not happening from a transparency standpoint. The neighbor, specifically Ms. Francis, was a part of a conversation we had in our last Forest and Beach Commission meeting when the property was one whole unit about taking trees off. And I kind of feel like, at least from her feedback on the second go-round on the new single lot, that number one, I didn't see any story poles. So you can't really see the design of the property with how the trees impact that. You did put down the kind of the layouts, but without story poles, it kind of doesn't give you a flavor for, are these trees, their canopy, how are they gonna be impacted by the height and width of the new building thing? So that was a struggle for me a little bit to understand. I get it. Obviously, some of the trees have got to come out just to even put the foundation down, so I get that. But again, it would be much more helpful for us as a commissioner, me personally, to see story poles where I can see how it really impacts the canopy of a particular tree and how that's going to impact that whole viewpoint for the neighborhood and the neighbors. And again, as per Ms. Francis, she felt like that this has all been kind of rushed to the planning commission without kind of getting a little better transparency on what's going on with the canopies of without story poles, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I would say is I think I'm not clear about what my position is about approving this without story poles and some of the other things. Maybe I'd leave that to the property, the building and planning to get for purposes of the next stage. But that's my concern is I didn't see a lot, and I appreciate what you want to do with solar. I think that's really cool, and I think that's what we've got to start doing across the board in Carmel. So thank you for that, and those are my two cents on the deal.
Anyone else from the commission have some questions about the material that Mr. Lehman has presented?
I would just agree with Brian. It was unclear. It looked as though when we were on site that some of the trees could have been saved. They're outside of where the house is, and I couldn't get a sense of how tall the house was going to be or the size of the house. There certainly are trees that are outside of where the buildings are going to be. It just seemed like really almost all of the bigger trees, the nicer trees were going to be gone. I couldn't even really get a sense of what was going to be left once they were all gone. So I would like to get a better sense too on what the dimensions of the house are, the height, I actually had thought that we were going to be at a different point. I thought that there would be some sort of a pre-approval pending X, Y, or Z. That's when we had done this the first time. I thought that would be what our second meeting was going to be. It doesn't sound like that's the case. This was just submitted, but nothing's been determined at this point. Are you waiting to hear from us before?
Should I respond or?
Please.
I was not involved with the project at that point of this application. This lot was sold, and so the previous owner had submitted that application and abandoned that project. And so my involvement with this began well after that, your last meeting and any of the previous project. One of the things I have tried to do with the neighbors, both met with the neighbor directly adjacent in the back of the lot. We had a great conversation. He's actually deals in landscape, and was really helpful in talking to me about the trees and saying, yeah, he's in complete agreement with Justin's assessments, of the health of certain trees. And also met with Kelly Francis quite a few times. She has a full set of the plans. As soon as I was ready to submit and kind of flushed out my concept, met with her and talked about what was going on with the project and presented her with the drawings so we could walk through them and kind of show her all of that information. As far as story poles go, it not being a requirement of Forest and Beach, and I suspect that has to do with it hasn't, like this is your process, right? We go to Forest and Beach, we look at the preliminary approval, then it goes through planning. There might be adjustments that are made, and the story poles aren't cheap to put up. and it's tough to keep them up in good condition for a really long period of time. I would be happy to put up story poles if it's critical to the Forest and Beach approval. But that's why I tried to get the better sense of it by laying out the footprint of the building on site, so we could see it there. But I'm happy to do that, but it not being a requirement, therefore I didn't even approach that idea.
So again, as a part of your submission to the building and planning, you will have to put up story poles at some point.
Absolutely.
So I guess the challenges that we've had on a number of different occasions with dealing with trees is we're the first in line. We're the first in line.
It is on.
And it seems like at times we struggle with that we're waiting. We'd rather have planning and building do their process and have us come in secondarily to take a look at, okay, so what does this mean for the trees given what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And again, we talk about, the process that we go through here, and I feel at times we're struggling with the fact that we're ahead of planning and building to make an assessment on trees, when in this case, we don't have story poles, right? And that's maybe not fair to you because this is a process you're being directed to follow, but we're just struggling with, we can't get a visual of what this means for the trees without really understanding what's going on with story poles and the height of things and things of that nature. So, I don't have a...
I think you're on something that'll be good for discussion when we bring it back.
Yeah.
I think it's really important right now just to make sure that we don't have any more questions for Mr. Lehman and his material that he's presenting.
Responding back to him on the process, and so...
Any other questions about what he's presented? I just had two, if no other. First of all, you're not the property owner, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, got it. And what was my other thing? I think I lost my train of thought. Nope, we'll just go with that. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation, and then we'll go ahead and look to see if there's anyone else from the public here in chambers that would like to speak to this. Doesn't look like it here. How about online? It looks like we've got a hand that's come up from Ms. Kelly Francis. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay. I'm starting to understand this process better, but it is quite confusing, especially given the application, the wording of the application now where it stands. But again, my name is Kelly Francis. I'm, as you know, a third-generation owner of the property next door to the south, and I live here full-time. So I'm sharing the cost of the fence between the properties with Mr. Lehman, who has sold one of the 3 lots, the southernmost, by Jeff Britton. Both developers stated their intent to develop the lot by building different houses on it and requested removal of different trees for that purpose. Mr. Lehman seeks to remove more oak trees on the 1 lot than Mr. Britton proposed on all 3 lots. The permit application also seemed to request removal of at least 1 tree along the joint fence line, but this was resolved earlier, a few minutes ago, at the commissioner's inspection tour, where Mr. Lehman told me that the fence tree lines, in fact, are not included in this permit application. So I and neighbors weren't advised of the forester's initial inspection of the property, and Mr. Lehman at that time wasn't able to fully answer our questions, or my questions anyway. And suddenly now I have a fee-based forester inspection date tomorrow for a different tree, and the forester kindly agreed to take a look also at the jointly owned fence line trees at that time. So the last minute nature of this could have been avoided, in my opinion, by including neighbors in the forester's initial inspection or somewhere along the way explaining what was going on. And then finally, I do think I understand this better now, but Mr. Lehman, and I don't have current plans, I just have initial plans, which did affect this fence line that we're sharing and trees and so on along there. But anyway, his proposal to remove 9 oak trees on the one lot next door seems excessive to me and to certain neighbors. Last fall, the owner developer, Mr. Britton, over neighbors' objections, was granted a permit to remove 8 more oak trees. He'd already removed 3 on all 3 lots, subject to issuance of a building permit. Now Mr. Lehman seeks to remove 9 oak trees on only 1 lot. Several neighbors have ongoing concerns in this regard, but none of us were included in the forester's initial inspection, and none other than me are able to attend this hearing. Moreover, the trees are of heightened importance in that this is a highly traversed area due to its proximity to the Forest Theater, Mission Trail, and downtown. Also, an area that I still am confused about, but I will try to understand it better, is the forester's report, as I noted, rates all trees to be removed as, quote, relatively healthy and in fair condition. And yet that's not what I've really heard as I was out there a few minutes ago. Some of the neighbors that commented, wow, it's, tree number 3, 4, and 5 are gorgeous. That is outrageous that these healthy trees are being cut down. The city should make and redesign the home and preserve the trees. Somebody else said they oppose the removal of any trees behind our fence, but are out of the country and unable to attend the hearing. And then finally, the application requires that height poles are installed prior to the commissioner's tour of inspection. I know this was just discussed. We continue to object to the failure to comply with this requirement in the application, but do appreciate very much the tape on the ground that was added today. So that helped clarify sort of what we were doing and why and so on. And I don't know now, based on these comments, whether it was a requirement or not. It's just stated in the application that there will be story poles. And I think, I wondered at one point whether the commission could give an advisory opinion, because I do understand that property owners want to know before they go to all the expense of, design, but could the commission not give an advisory opinion saying we'll approve X? I mean, I guess that's what it is, to the extent that it's cart before the horse about trees coming out before plans are approved, but so I don't know where that all lands. It's a little confusing.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to me, though.
Thanks, Kelly. Just a reminder to the public that when making a public comment, please keep it to the 3 minutes allotted. Looks like Ramey, you've got something you'd like to say?
Thank you. Yeah, from my standpoint, I wasn't able to go on the tour today. There's a lot of conversation about north-south. This map doesn't have north-south on it, so I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. But number 4, I think from the design standpoint, could easily be retained. And it'd be lovely for number 5 to be retained. The ADU could probably be trimmed a bit, and number 2 could be retained. I don't know, it seems like wall-to-wall house, ADU, garage, patio deck is just a bit excessive for this size lot, my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Ramey. Doesn't look like there's anyone else online that would like to make a comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close the comments and bring it back to commission for discussion. Who would like to lead it off?
I mean, I kind of said my point about, again, back the horse before the cart. It's sort of the cart before the horse. I struggle a little bit on this particular property without getting a visibility of the canopies, maybe even a conversation like Ramey said about an ADU that's fairly large and it takes 2 trees out on the property, and ADUs are supposed to be kind of an ancillary piece of property and it's pushed up really tight to the property line. Again, those are more building and planning related issues, but they're taking two nice, healthy trees away for purposes of an ADU that's probably, I don't mean, you can have the ADUs at many different size levels, and I don't know what size that ADU is, but it looks fairly large. So again, I'm struggling with removing trees without really understanding, the implications of the planning and building.
I'm assuming that this is legal coverage with these three different things. Is it legal coverage for Carmel?
I think most of the time when we have people come requesting removal of trees ahead of building and planning, we've had I don't want to say a precedent, but we've sent many people back to building and planning, first to have their plans approved and then come to us. To me, this lot is a little bit of an exception for two reasons. One is there is no present structure on the lot, and it would probably be useful to building and planning to have some perspective from this group about tree removals because there are so many. And two, because the lot currently has 17 trees on it. I think when we went to this lot originally, there's no way to build a home without removing trees off this property, and probably to remove several trees, right? And so I think Justin, this is one where I would be inclined to support the city forester about which trees are the best trees to remove. I think, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did say today that all the trees being requested to be removed related to the house and the ADU were in fair to poor condition, correct?
Yes, the number 3 was in fair or better condition, but number 4 was in poor to very poor condition with bark beetle infestation, and trees 1 and 2 have breakage and dying in their crown.
Right, so you had...
In the back, yeah.
So it sounded like from 4 back, trees 1, 2, 3, and 4 at least were...
3's okay, but
Okay.
it's just, that's right in the middle.
In the middle of the house,
Yeah.
okay, but I think you had said that those from 4 backward, with the exception of 3, they were declining condition.
Yes.
On the way back.
Yes, and
right?
4's very poor.
And then when we talked about the front portion, the street-facing portion of the lot,
Those trees were healthier, and
they were healthier, but from your perspective, that seemed like a reasonable place for the garage,
yeah, and
right?
like I said, I thought the best would be right in the middle, but that is a design issue in terms
Right.
of where you're going to put things, because there were several smaller, poorer trees in the middle, but that's...
Right, so I guess just from my perspective, I think this is one where I would be inclined, particularly because any authorization is contingent on approval of the design study and issuance of building permits. This is one where I might be inclined to support the forester with their recommendation, because I think this is going to be a very difficult lot, no matter what, to manage trees.
I agree with you, Kelly, that I feel that way also.
Tamara?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Justin. Trees 5, 6, and 10.
Oh,
Can-
okay.
Can you tell me what condition that those are all in? I know we discussed it on site, but just to refresh me.
10's in good condition, but it's growing along the ground, and it's non-native, but it is...
That's the non-native,
It's the
okay.
tea tree.
It's the tea tree.
It's native to like Australia and New Zealand. It's healthy though.
It's like a
Okay.
Tree number 5 is in fair to fair poor condition, and tree number 6 is in fair condition.
Is in what condition?
Fair.
Fair.
Most of the trees at the frontage of the property are in fair condition. Fair to good. Fair to good.
I just, when I look at this, and again, just trying to see if there's any trees that could be salvaged, and the ones, of course, in the front are more apparent to the neighborhood. So for the neighbors, that if there's anything that could be salvaged that they can see, I think would be useful also. So it doesn't look like they're in the way of the design. Again, we don't know exactly how high that the building is going to be or the garage, but they don't appear to be in the way of the building.
I think we need to consider too that this is still, are there 8 trees being left?
9.
9.
So that's more than twice the amount recommended by the city, not upper canopy, but they're oaks, and Sarah Davis believed those were upper canopy, but anyway, to me, it's still, that's about as many trees as anyone would want.
And there would still be
Two more.
two more replanted
Oh,
to put
11.
to keep some uppers in the neighborhood.
Well, the one on property and one
Yes.
on city
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
So I would, Tamara, was there anything else? No. Brian, I agree with you about the polls and the visual. It sure, boy, makes a difference. And gosh, like over the last 4 years, I feel like normally we go to sites and they're already up. So to not see them, it takes away from the ability to understand the impact of the canopies themselves. And since most, really actually all of the trees in consideration are lower canopy, it's tough. That being said, Kelly, you've got it right on. And I think, Sarah, you're saying the same thing. It's a lot to be developed, and there are homes on both sides that are already developed, and they appreciate what they have, but this lot to be developed, trees are going to have to be removed. I think we've had an opportunity to see Mr. Lehman's, a couple of his projects in the past, and I've felt that he's always been considerate of trees on the property, and also think he's been considerate of the neighbors. So I'm inclined to think that he's put, at least at this point, the best plan he could put forward. Whether or not building goes with that is really up to them at that point. Yeah, I'm here, would support the notion that we're gonna give our forester the approval for his recommendation and move forward. If someone would like to make a motion along those lines, or if there's any other comments within this group right here.
You can make it.
Doesn't look like it.
Well, I think we're ready.
Brian, do you want to make it?
I
It's not
guess
going to.
I make a motion for approval of the forester's recommendation to remove the trees as identified with submission.
And replant.
Contingent.
Contingent upon
Contingent.
replanting the 2 upper canopy trees, both public and private, that are recommended within the report.
And replanting.
And replanting, that's what I said.
Okay.
I don't know.
Commissioner Sowers, can you get closer to the microphone?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Did you say that?
Say the
It's really hard when you sit all the way.
Oh, okay, I'm
Got
sorry.
it.
So
Yeah.
Just read the recommendation.
Approval of the removal of the 9 coastal live oaks and 1 tea tree at the applicant's expense, contingent on the approval of design study 23290 and the issuance of a building permit. Should the removals be approved, require the replanting of 2 upper canopy trees, 1 on private property and 1 in the public right of way at the applicant's expense.
He's reading it, though.
With a smile, that's okay.
Did you get that?
Is there a second?
I got all of that.
Now it's a good.
Is there a second?
I second.
I guess we've got a roll call on that.
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey? Yes. Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers?
Yes.
Thank you, the motion is passed.
Okay, well, that gets us out of public hearings and then on to orders of business. Orders of business are agenda items that require city council, board, or commission discussion, debate, direction to staff, and/or action. The first order of business this afternoon is to receive a presentation regarding the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and provide some feedback. So, Justin, to you first, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, may I ask a question to you, Commissioner,
Sure.
the Chair? There was a request that we continue item number 7 that was submitted by someone in the public. And so I'm just wondering, for purposes of this meeting, if we're open to this continuance, could we address that now so we don't keep people waiting?
Staff
Till the end.
recommends we continue, we do not continue the item, that we hear the item as scheduled.
That was your,
Yes.
okay.
That's
But-
staff
But
recommendation.
we're not on that item anyway. Right?
I know, but I think for logistics, to not keep people waiting to the end, that's why it was, if we were going to continue it, we can do that now.
We should, our recommendation to the commission is to proceed with that item as scheduled, and then certainly that the person who wrote in and that letter can be discussed at that time. And in fact, it will.
I would tend to agree. Don't know if we need to have to vote on that. I don't believe we would.
You're not changing if you're not changing the agenda, you don't need to vote.
Got it. I don't think there's a reason. We're going to move forward with the agenda as it is.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
We just had
Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, we've just had a couple of meetings where they've gone really, really long, and we've postponed things at the end.
Yep.
And so the time to rejigger the agenda is now before we start the orders of business, that's all.
Well, the chief will only be, what, 3 to 4 hours, he said?
I don't know, what does it take to get through 273 slides?
We're going to definitely need that recess with nothing goodness.
You bring getting pizza or?
It's on order.
Oh, we're going now? Okay.
We're definitely going to, yeah.
All right, so this is our recommendation. We're just giving you guys a presentation on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Chief Panholzer is going to be presenting this. The plan was developed as a coordination between the cities of Pacific Grove, Carmel-by-the-Sea, and the city of Monterey and also collaboration with Monterey Fire to just assess all of the surrounding areas, fire risk, and to create a community input and outreach and create a plan going forward. In May, there was a workshop where the public was allowed input, and then this has been developed since then with Monterey Fire and the cities, and also with the consultant Dudek. So we've had a couple attachments in terms of the areas of the different cities and the priority projects, and we're only looking into the Carmel ones. So with that, pass it over to the chief.
Thank you, and good afternoon. And no, I don't have 273 slides. So yes, it is. I'm here to talk about the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. It's still not in its final version. It's kind of in the last draft, and hopefully we'll get it across the finish line here shortly. But I do want to allow for you to see it, and certainly we're open to input and thoughts on it too. But I think it's also really important that we get the information out about it so that people know what it is and what it's supposed to be, and also what it is not, because there are some misconceptions sometimes. So it worked before, but it isn't going to work now. Hopefully that woke it up again. So what is a community wildfire protection plan? It is a tool that is designed in the long run to reduce the severity and the impact of wildfires and increase community resilience against wildfires. So what it is we do an assessment of what the, the wildfire risks are in a community. And then based on those, we identify the relative risks. So we go, okay, this is where we really have a bigger concern. It's a less of a concern here. And certainly, I would say our entire community collectively, between all three cities, there is significant concerns, but there's some areas where we really need to be more concerned. And so we look at where are those areas, because clearly those would be the best places to focus some attention on reducing the risks. Then it identifies an action plan, and we've developed a list of priority projects that we can start tackling to mitigate the risk of wildfires. And so how do we use it? We use it as a resource to allow, or a plan to allow policymakers to make decisions on what they want to do. So this isn't a plan to actually initiate any projects. This just identifies a list of projects based on the community input and based on the professional assessments on where we need to do work. Each project then still will separately get initiated by the city of Carmel, for example, providing the resources, the dollars and the staff time to do that project, or to get the community involved in doing a project. So it still has another layer before a project is implemented. And the key thing there is that any project that gets initiated at that time would need to go through any necessary environmental reviews and things like that. So this isn't like a blanket permission to clear cut things or what have you. This is let's look at these areas, let's put these on the agenda for the future, and then when we do, let's do this, we do the appropriate environmental reviews to make sure we address all the concerns of the environment, et cetera. We also want to update the plan on a regular basis, so it'll probably be done. Our goal is to do it on an annual basis so that we can show, A, we're making progress, and B, the world changes. And so what we see as a priority project today may not be the same priority projects we see a couple years down the road. So we want to be able to be flexible and have input and make changes to that plan. The CWPP that we're planning is the first one that's been developed for the 3 jurisdictions that we're doing it, that it's being done for. We started the project back in, well, we actually started before November of 2022. I've been actually trying to get this thing started for many, many years, applying for grants to try and fund it, and we finally gave up on that and found the money elsewhere. But the intent is to have it done probably by next month. It's a joint plan because it reflects, one, that we jointly have we have a joint fire department. The City of Monterey Fire Department provides services to all 3 jurisdictions, so it makes sense for us to be. And the wildfires don't know city boundaries, so we all have a joint shared wildfire problem here. So it makes sense to do that. But the plan does look at each individual jurisdiction and identify the specific risks and identifies projects within each community. And as Justin mentioned, we did go through a community outreach process. We had a survey that was open for quite a number of months, allowing community to provide input, had, I think, in the neighborhood of 500 respondents to that. And then we also had a community workshop in each of the 3 jurisdictions, and I want to give kudos to Carmel. Smallest jurisdiction and have one of the best turnouts for the public workshop. So excellent job on that. So the plan area, it kind of provides a visual of what the plan area is. Basically, it's all the land that's within the jurisdictions of the 3 cities. The goals that were developed, and we developed, part of this was we had a steering committee that consisted of staff and fire department and other staff from the cities. Usually it involved planning staff and forestry people from the jurisdictions, et cetera, that all had input on kind of the guidance of where this plan is going. And they developed 6 goals. Those goals are that, one, that we want to have a community that's informed about wildfire risks through educational outreach and things like that. We also want to make sure that we don't, we're working together as the 3 agencies, but there's a huge piece of real estate between Carmel and the other 2 jurisdictions called Pebble Beach. And like I said, the fire doesn't know any difference, so we also have a goal of working collaboratively with our neighboring jurisdictions to ensure that we're all on the same page and kind of supporting each other's efforts. And I do want to say that we've had really excellent cooperation and collaboration with CAL FIRE and the Pebble Beach Community Services District in addressing some of these issues. Another goal was that infrastructure will be hardened against wildfire, so we know we have homes and significant structures within the forest, and one way we can protect those is to address how we build those and how we make them more resilient to wildfire rather than having to just deal with the wildland fuels that are adjacent to them. That we will also maintain and do fuel reduction work with the ecosystem health in mind, and environmental protection, and also respect for the cultural significance of the resources that we have here. The other thing is that we will commit to always being prepared and able to respond and have adequate resources to respond to any wildfires. And then the last thing is the kind of the hopeful wish, and that is that all 3 jurisdictions will make the necessary resources available to be able to carry out the items in the plan. The plan documents we decided to go with a different variety. This is not a plan that's a 6-inch binder that sits on a shelf and 10 years from now we see a nice thick layer of dust on it. This is actually primarily an online, it's a GIS story map. I will show, in the interest of avoiding technology gaffes here, I'll open that up after I'm done with my presentation so you can see what that looks like, and I certainly encourage you to go look at it online. Some of the links are still not live in it yet because, like I said, it's still in draft form. But it's a story map, so basically you scroll through it, and you've probably seen some of these websites. Just as you scroll, things change on the screen, the maps change, et cetera, to kind of give you a lot of visual feedback on what you're trying to learn from that. There is a hard copy document too that's being developed that kind of gives a summary of the plan, and then a lot of supporting document, things that are just talk about best forest management practices, best fuels mitigate, all the different kinds of fuels mitigation practices that can be applied, kind of more boilerplate stuff. And then there's a priority projects list, of which I shared with you, and I think it was also in your agenda packet. And certainly, like we said, there's some that are specific to Carmel-by-the-Sea. The relative community risk rating, if you look up in the corner there where the city of Carmel is, you see that the highest risk areas are, as we kind of intuitively know, in the northern part of the city, in the area of Pescadero Canyon, and then also in the eastern part of the city, southeastern wing there, where Mission Trails Nature Preserve is, and basically that whole hillside through there. A little bit less of a risk area is the northeast corner, the upper part of Carmel Woods, and then the rest of the town is in a lower risk relative to those others. I'm not saying no risk, a lower relative risk. So clearly, based on this, and this was developed based on a lot of scientific analysis of. And when you go through the story map, it's all explained in there, what they looked at, the types of fuels, the fire behavior in those fuels, what the weather conditions are, all those things that factor into what makes an area at greater risk for having a wildfire and a wildfire becoming a significant impact to that area. So it makes the most sense, of course, for us to address those areas that are greatest risk first. So these are the priority projects that we identified in Carmel. As you see, one of them is Pescadero Canyon, the other one is Mission Trails Nature Preserve, and then also the lines on some of the roads identified that we need to assess all of our primary evacuation routes, because if there's a wildfire and we need to get out, the last thing we want is for the roads that we expect people to drive on be the ones that are going to be burning most intensely because we didn't trim fuels around the streets and whatnot. So that's one of the other things we're looking to do, is to assess are the evacuation routes going to be usable in the event that we need to use them. And then you see also Highway 1 leading north as an area. We don't have any jurisdiction over that, but we certainly can work with Caltrans to encourage them to maintain that as well, because that's where folks are going to be wanting to drive. So the priority projects that are listed for Carmel-by-the-Sea, besides the ones that are kind of generic, but specifically targeting fuels management in this city here. One is to develop a forest management plan for the Mission Trails Preserve with focus on the forest health and ladder fuel reduction, and that probably will tie in directly with the forest management plan. This is all designed to work together with those. Those plans are designed to work together, not to be in conflict with each other. The other thing is to collaborate with Pebble Beach Community Services District on developing some fuels reduction plans for Pescadero Canyon. Some of the canyon is in the jurisdiction of Carmel, but the bulk of it is on their side. And so, like I said, we've had a great working relationship with them, and so it should not be a problem to continue to work with them to reduce the risk along there. And then actually, I'm happy to say some of the work's already begun on this last one. The fuels reduction work within Forest Hill Park. There was quite a bit of accumulation of fire fuels there, and Public Works has already done a lot of great work there. So we can almost put a check mark on that one. So with that, that's the end of 273 slides. So we'll open it up to any questions or feedback or comments. And like I said, I'm happy to incorporate anything you have to share within the plan if it's something of that nature.
Well, thanks, Chief. We really appreciate that presentation. Anyone from the commission have some questions or comments?
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. We have more trees, but what about where trees are up against the houses, which isn't, or within a foot or so of the houses? And that's very common in Carmel.
It is. One of the things that we already do, and one of the items that's kind of identified as an action item for the entire jurisdiction of the Monterey Fire Department, is to continue and enhance our annual what we call defensible space inspections, which is when we inspect private properties and look for things like that, and then work with homeowners to reduce those risks. It has to do with, not some places, most houses do a good job, but some places they let their weeds grow to be 3-4 feet tall. We need to have those mowed down. Get dead branches out of trees, eliminate, like the last slide said about ladder fuels. Those are the fuels that allow a fire that's burning on the ground to climb a tree and get into the crown and into the canopy. A canopy fire, or crown fire as we call it, is a much greater risk because it's a lot harder to control and it can spread a lot faster. So we like to keep the fires usually start at ground level, and we try not to let them get up into the trees. So we get people to limb up their trees. All of that, of course, we are very sensitive to the fact that we have to work with the fact that we all live here because we like the trees and we like to have the forest, and so we have to be sensitive to that too. So it's kind of finding that balance of minimizing the fire risk without overly tearing down trees and damaging them.
One of the other things that I know our constituencies are very concerned about, even Chair Meyer had brought this up, is the increasing challenges that we're getting with fire insurance capabilities. And I know a lot of the communities are getting it and being a part of what's called the Fire Safe program, where there are discounts for insurance, as well as I think when you get on that program, I know it's a difficult program for Carmel and maybe even for Monterey and some parts of PG to even qualify for, given the amount of forests that we have here and the shape it's in. But I guess if you could speak a little bit, if you have knowledge of the Fire Safe program, is that something we can put our arms around as a city, or is it something, I know Pebble Beach has done really a nice job on the Pescadero Canyon cleaning it out, but I know as we get down towards the beach area, it seems to have a lot of fuel in it, where in the upper part up towards Cal Fire's buildings, they've done a really nice job of clearing out there. And I don't know, is that all Pebble Beach's concern, or is that Carmel? Because I mean, I live, and I know Chair Myers lives right on the kind of the edge of Pescadero Canyon, and it's a concern for us as homeowners, but it's also a concern for the neighborhoods wrapped around the Pescadero Canyon, because our insurance companies are circling in the same shaded area you have, and they look at it and they say, well, we're gonna bump your insurance levels way up because now you're in a shade. And that shade is what they look at when they're coming back to us on our property insurance and saying, oh, we're going to triple you or drop your insurance in general. Can you speak to this a little bit? I mean, you probably get this all the time, but I haven't heard much about it.
Yes, I can. And so the easy, quick answer one is about Pescadero Canyon. Yes, the bulk of it is in Pebble Beach, but there's certainly the portions that are within the city of Carmel's jurisdiction we can address. But we've already worked. A lot of the work that's done in Pebble Beach was because we also prodded them. Hey, we need to do some work here because the risk on your side poses a risk for our folks here. And they've done a great job. Also, in other areas along the Skyline, Highway 68 corridor, we've gotten a lot of great work done up there because it is in Pebble Beach, but the risk is posed to the Skyline neighborhood in Monterey. So, so we've got a great working relationship there, and I suspect that will continue. What you're speaking about, I'm guessing, is actually called the FireWise program.
FireWise, yes.
Yeah, and if you look at it's item number 4 on the action plan, so the first page of what I just handed out to you, the fourth item on that in that table, and yes, that's one of the things we want to do. The FireWise program is one that has been recognized by the insurance industry, and actually now our insurance commissioner in the state of California is developing requirements that insurance companies are mandated to provide you a discount if you are part of a FireWise community. So it's certainly a program we want to support, and we will support and try to foster. We have some residents in some, I know one in Pacific Grove, and there's one in Monterey now, where residents have stepped up and said, hey, we want to develop a FireWise community. In short, a FireWise community isn't something we do, it's something that the residents do. It's a community, grassroots kind of effort of a collection of a neighborhood that says, hey, we're all kind of in this together. We're in a kind of a common area here, and we want to do things to help reduce our fire risk. And so then they develop that. They work with us to assess the specific risks in that neighborhood, and it can be things like you identify homes that need to have some limbs removed from close to their chimney or close to their roof. We need to do a little more. We collectively are having too many pine needles accumulate on the roofs of our houses, and maybe we can trim some branches alongside the road, things like that. And then the community actually invests in making those efforts. Certainly it's something the city can support where appropriate. And you go through a process that you register then with the FireWise program, and when you provide all the necessary documentation, and part of the documentation is each resident must show that they've invested a certain amount, and it can be either dollars or blood, sweat, and tears, to provide for that kind of work to get the community safer. And when all of that paperwork is submitted, then the Firewise program recognizes that community as a Firewise community. And when you get that little certificate, you send it to your insurance company, I guess, and I haven't gone through it myself.
Can that be done block by block?
It can be done block by block or several blocks.
So a city doesn't necessarily have to be
No.
wrapped around that?
No. So
Chair Myers and I could hold hands and say, our 2 blocks want to be Firewise, and we get all the neighborhoods to wrap their arms around it, and whatever paperwork and stuff that could be done, and that could be a Firewise
100%. Yes, and
Really?
and if you think about it, if we had to get the entire city on board, we'd be, here in another 10 years trying to get everybody together.
absolutely.
But if you do it in your neighborhood,
Tree setbacks from main structures, and I think it includes some things.
it includes all sorts of things, and you're not required to do everything that you might identify, but you have to identify what some of the things are, and then you have to take action on some of them. And then it's a continuing thing. You can't just do it once and check done forever. You have to. It's an ongoing thing where you have to continually maintain those kinds of things, because as we all know, the stuff grows back. So, but you don't have to do everything that might be identified as a potential risk, because there are other factors. You guys here are listening to people wanting to remove trees or do and have to balance. Well, but we're a city that loves its trees, so we need to balance that. So certainly that all factors in. But it would be an excellent thing. I think that it needs to be started on a couple of, maybe 2 blocks or something like that. That's a good sized group to work with, and I think it'd be contagious. Because once you start talking to the people at the next block over and show them that you got 5% discount on that exorbitant insurance premium you're getting, hey, I want to be in on it too. Well, here's what you need to do. And so certainly we'll work with any community members that want to do that to help support it. But it's very much a community effort driven thing.
One other question, that little shaded thing that you had around kind of the Pescadero, is that created by you, that's published statewide, and that's where these insurance organizations are pulling
No.
because it was stated to me that if you're within 2 blocks of Pescadero Canyon, the insurance companies are going either bye-bye or they're bumping rates, and people that are 3 blocks over are not being impacted by it. And I'm trying to understand how they get that.
If you figure it out, let me know, because I get to ask that all the time.
Okay.
The insurance companies, when they've been asked, you should share how you decide so that homeowners can take actions to mitigate those things. It's proprietary.
It's proprietary, so they all have a different way.
Yeah, they probably all have the same program. They just don't share it, or I don't know. But a lot of those are based on the state's fire risk, hazard assessments.
Of which do you get that visibility as well? The state's assessment of that?
That was one of the maps.
Yeah, one of the maps that's in the plan, and you can see it online, is the fire hazard risk assessment that the state does. They're actually updating them, and the ones within city jurisdictions are going to probably get updated next year. And so those are the kinds of things that they use, but they also now can use satellite imagery to see, and they don't paint your property, they paint a neighborhood, or they paint a zip code, or, it's a large area. So maybe one insurance company decided, 2 blocks away from Pescadero Canyon is where we draw the line.
Being a Firewise probably wouldn't hurt your effort?
I'm going to say it's always going to be a good thing, because certainly it's going to help with your insurance premiums, but at the end of the day, you want to also be safer, right?
Right.
The insurance is one of those things we hate to pay for, but we never want to use. So,
Hey, Chief, really appreciate you taking some time today and making this presentation for us. Having had an opportunity to look at the GIS study map, seeing the draft anyway, prior to, really found it intuitive, evolving as is to use to go through. Looking forward to when that draft will actually be live. And you were thinking sometime in November?
That's my goal, is if I get any further input from any of the stakeholders, we're in the review process, and once that's done, we'll send it back to the consultant that we used, and they'll dot the i's, cross the t's, and hit publish. So this is the story map that's available online. I wish I could give you a link, but there's all sorts of numbers and letters. It's one of those complicated things. But if you just do a search, Monterey CWPP, it's like number 1 or 2 on this that comes up in the search engine. But just real quickly, we can show you that as you scroll, if you scroll the words here. As you scroll down, yeah, then you can get the button. So as you scroll down, it talks a lot about what it is and what have you, and then it goes into a lot of, it talks about the plan area. If you want to scroll faster, there's also, so you can zoom down. So if you're interested about the fire environment, it talks about the local wildfire conditions and talks a little bit about what it takes to have a wildfire, how the weather impacts things, et cetera. So you can learn a lot there. As you go further down, like the relative wildfire risk rating, it does this for some reason.
Yeah, it did that a bunch.
But somewhere I want to show you how, then it shows you the relative risk maps and then the action plan, and somewhere on one of these you can see the maps dynamically change as you, no, I think I'm too low. But you'll see things change visually as it explains what's going on so that you can, so here, for example, it zooms into the particular area that it's referring to. So it makes it a little more, so that somebody can actually learn something and get something from it. That's not as easy to do from a published document. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to look at it, and if you have any questions or whatever, you can reach me directly. You can find my email online. It's panholzer@monterey.org. Or I know you all know how to get a hold of Justin and Bob, so and they know how to get a hold of me. So
Yeah, I think we'll all be excited to see this connected to the city's website.
And it will be, yes.
The residents have opportunity, and boy, I would really encourage this kind of cross-pollination with our real estate professionals and agencies, and so that they're sharing that information with existing homeowners and new homeowners, and so that together we can. This is a really hot topic, I guess, maybe not the right word, but
good pun.
It's a really important topic that's on people's minds. Do we want to open this up to public for some public
We
comments?
certainly do.
Yeah.
I would like to thank the chief. Great job. And if you could send me the slides that you showed today.
They're on the computer here, but I'll send them to you.
Okay.
As well, yeah.
All right. We'll publish it in the Friday letter. We'll send a link to both the program and your slides to get the word out to the rest of the community.
Perfect.
Thanks again, Chief. And then I'll go ahead and open up to public comment and start right here in Chambers. Is there anyone from Chambers that would like to make a comment about the presentation? It doesn't appear so. Then take it back to our online community. It looks like everybody's in the ocean. Let's see, hang on. I don't see any hands coming up, so we'll go ahead and close that, and then that we will continue to move on. Thanks again, Chief.
You're welcome.
Let's see, the next order of business is to receive a status update of the North Dunes Habitat Restoration Project for fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23, and it looks like we're turning it over to Mary.
Coming. There we go.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. I wanted to talk to you about the status update of the North Dunes Habitat Restoration Project. This is for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 and 2022 and 2023. The North Dunes is 8 acres of environmentally sensitive habitat area. It has 2 native special status species present at the dunes, which is the black-legless lizard and also Tidestrom's lupin, and they're located in the central dune scrub habitat. In October of 2016, the city initiated a 5-year coastal development permit, and we renewed that permit in August of 2021 for an additional 5-year extension. it's for restoration efforts that it had been overseen by Native Solutions during fiscal years 2016 through 2023. So it ended in June of 2023. And at that time, Denise Duffy and Associates was contracted to continue the habitat restoration through the end of 2025. So between 2023 through 2025. The city public works staff and the volunteer groups collectively hauled over 5,000 invasive non-native plants in year 6. So this is, Denise Duffy and Associates put together a summary that's included in your packet, and it includes year 6 and year 7, and it's a summary of that information. So some of the maintenance highlights is that invasive non-native plants that include ice plant, narrow leaf ice plant, oxalis, grasses, and other non-native annual grasses were all removed. And weed control activities, including manual removal methods, were undertaken, as well as herbicides were not used. So Native Solutions collected, propagated, and planted 125 native plants, and the city and volunteers had also done miscellaneous repairs to the fences and the posts. Some of the monitoring criteria under fiscal year 2021-2022 was that the success criteria is greater than 50% native plant cover, and over less than 15% non-native plant cover was the criteria for success. And native species diversity exceeded the success criteria of greater than 30 species, because we had 41 species that were identified that year.
Excuse me, Mary, could you advance the slide?
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Okay. Non-native species that didn't meet the criteria of less than 15 species, and it had 18 species that were identified. So just by a few that they didn't meet that criteria that year. And then Tidestrom's lupin success criteria is greater than 1,000 individuals in at least 10 different clusters. And the data showed that a total of 748 individuals were counted in 2 clusters. So some of the factors that were impacting the Tidestrom's lupin success include the slow growth of the Tidestrom's lupin. There was difficulty with germination, the drought was that year, and impacts of herbivory and trampling as well. On year 7, so this is fiscal year 2022-2023, under maintenance, the volunteers had removed 1,585 pounds of non-invasive native plants. The invasive native plants include the grass, the oxalis, chickweed, popweed, and non-native annual grasses. They also removed eucalyptus woody debris and seed pods near Ocean Avenue and San Antonio. Weed control activities include manual removal methods. No herbicides were used either on this year. And Native Solutions propagated and installed 25 American dune grass, 10 Dudleya, and 18 sage plantings. We also continued to repair fences and posts throughout that year 7 too. Under monitoring, the plant cover data was collected in 6 of the 18 transects. Monitoring of the Tidestrom's lupin was not performed that year. And Tidestrom's lupin plant tissue samplings were collected for research that can help inform the management of Tidestrom lupin hybrids at the project site. The upcoming work that DD&A was going to perform is annual monitoring of the plant cover transects and the Tidestrom lupin populations in the spring of 2024. Their next report for years 6 through 8 is going to be received by the city next September, so September of 2024. Denise Duffy and Associates will provide maintenance priorities and restoration timing. and biologist supervised volunteer groups will continue to help with the maintenance and the restoration at the site. The city will install a split rail fence along San Antonio and Ocean Avenues, and as well as conduct miscellaneous repairs to the fences and the posts. And we also plan to install interactive signage. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mary.
Sounds good.
Does anyone from the commission have any questions?
So I had a couple of questions. So,
Hey, Brian, could you just get to your mic, please?
oh, I'm sorry, yes. My questions are, so again, because this is, I don't know if it's necessarily anything new for us as a Forest and Beach Commission, but it seems like over a number of years that Native Solutions was doing all this work, and then we flipped now to a new vendor. Reasons behind that, cost differentials, and it looks like, as you said in the end, that this new group isn't going to be providing any support to leading the volunteer groups on North Dunes, where Native Solutions was hand in hand with the volunteer groups. So that's something that's changed now with this new vendor versus Native Solutions. And
Right.
is that a problem? I mean, we have a lot of volunteer groups that are involved in the North Dunes, and if they were being coordinated by Native Solutions and now they're not.
Yeah, that was something that the city was having some reporting items that had been late, I guess, for a long time. There had been annual reports and items that had been delayed, and so a lot of the volunteer efforts and some of the work and maintenance that was happening, but it was actually the reporting that we were having some issues with. And so I wasn't here, but the city went out for that. We looked at different consultants, and I believe there were, I don't know, maybe 13 different consultants that proposed
A bunch, yeah.
on the for the work, and the city picked Denise Duffy and Associates for it. And but Denise Duffy and Associates, part of their contract is not managing the volunteer groups.
And if I can chime in and kind of add to that, the Native Solutions agreement did expire at the end of June, at the end of the last fiscal year.
Uh-huh.
There were also concerns, as Ms. Canepa knows, of standard of care not meeting the requirements in the agreement. So it was a combination of ending the agreement and completing the work contributed to the city reviewing other consultant proposals, and we saw through the qualification-based selection we picked Denise Duffy and Associates. It is true Denise Duffy is not doing oversight of the biology oversight of the volunteers.
So who's
going to do it?
Who's going to do that, Mary?
Mary's doing it.
I'm not a biologist. As you could probably tell by me reading some of the names of the plants.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
right. We still have been talking to Joey to see if her interest in continuing on to oversee the volunteers. So there has been discussions.
Yes, and the Carmel Garden Club does hire Joey to oversee their efforts, as they are working on a lot of their projects at the North Dunes as well. So yeah, that's something that we have been looking into, because we know that Joey has provided a lot of service to the city, and with North Dunes, it's been a successful.
And if I may, part of this was Joey did train a number of the volunteers. There's a half a dozen different volunteer groups that Joey has trained, and assuming we have the same people, which we would, whether or not Joey or a biologist is physically there, someone who's well trained, we believe is sufficient to continue on with the weed pulling and things.
Mary, I had a question. In the time frame in which DDNA has come on to today, how much time has elapsed?
Well, they came on at the beginning of July.
Beginning of July.
They did,
Okay,
and
so
they
it's
gave us a
pretty
list.
fresh. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so really what they did initially was provide this summary of kind of the State of the Union, essentially.
Right.
When I'm looking at this, just for clarification and understanding about what they'll be doing going forward, when I read that they're going to be providing maintenance priorities and restoration timing, they're actually going to be doing work in the dunes, correct? They're not just giving the city direction on what the city should do.
Yeah, they are not doing a lot of the the weed pulling and that type of work, but they are doing some of the restoration efforts and also providing direction on what needs to get done.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're going to lay out the plan, and then hopefully we'll lean back on the community volunteer groups to execute those plans outside of some of the bigger pieces of perhaps the plantings that are specific to the North Dunes restoration.
Right.
Okay, thanks. I just was looking for clarification. Anyone else?
So just to clarify, it sounds like it's a reduced scope versus the previous provider.
It's
Different.
Yeah, it's a different scope. Yeah. It's yeah. Not as many things as what the Native Solutions was providing because they were overseeing the volunteer efforts.
Well, thanks. It doesn't look like there's any other questions. Perhaps there might be some public comment. We'll go to chambers first. It looks like we've got someone stepping up to the podium.
I do. Dale Byrne. I can't ask questions, but in addition to having less, well, as Bob said, it's hard to say less because Joey was always late with the reports. And I work with her and I understand that. But it's at a higher price. I'd like to suggest, let me back up. At one of our Friday meetings recently, we were asked to provide, on October 14th, some assistance in pulling some weeds, which we gladly did. And we've got it organized with the Rotary Club to come out this Saturday. And I just found out that our downtown detail ladies, we had so much fun working with them last weekend that they're going to come out and join in the fun. So we'll probably have at least 10, 12 people. So we're excited about that. But I had to reach out to Joey, and I finally got her to show up on Wednesday. And she trained me, like Bob said, so I know what to do this time, but it requires very specialized oversight on exactly what to do. So unfortunately, she's not getting paid, and she needs to get paid. And so I would suggest that because it wasn't included in this contract, even though it's at least twice as much as the previous contract, I would like you to figure out a way to take some budget money, whether it's from that contract or add additional money, so that we don't have to pay Joey to go out and volunteer to do projects that it's hard work too. So I don't think we should have to pay for it. I don't think the women's or the garden club should have to pay for it. I think it should be paid for by the city because we're providing volunteer time, and that's my 2 cents on that. I don't think it's a lot of money either, so if you could work that out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And if any of you want to join us on Saturday, you can meet at the restrooms. It's going to be on the boardwalk, but we're going to meet at the restrooms down at the end of Delmar. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. You're going to make sure you're doing that early so you're able to attend the Sunset Center when trees fall.
It's a busy day.
Okay.
And then Ken White's thing at Forest Hill.
That's right, the Bohemian. No one else from chambers, it doesn't appear. So is there anyone online that would care to make a comment about the presentation made about the North Dunes Habitat Restoration Project? I can't see.
I don't see any.
Okay, sounds like we don't see anybody, so we'll go ahead and move along with our orders of business.
The only other thing I want to add a comment in, I know Dale had brought up about the budgeting on this, and I have no idea where that sits, Bob, in the way of additional money to deal with that issue. But I know that as a part of a contribution that the lady that owns the property down on San Antonio where the eucalyptus trees, she donated $20,000 to the North Dunes project.
Miss Everett.
Miss Everett. I don't know whether any of those funds could be used for, hiring her to help, the volunteer groups deal with, I guess, a change in
Yeah, Laura Over did provide a above and beyond the required mitigation amount several years ago when her
I think
was
it's 20, I think
eucalyptus,
it's 20,000.
something like that, yeah. That was several fiscal years ago. That money was used for North Dunes efforts.
It was already used.
Yeah, but that's not
Okay.
available at this time.
Okay.
So one last question on the status of the North Dunes. As we track the progress against the objectives, if we fall behind, is that problematic for the city over the status of the location over time?
Well, let me go back in time a little bit. Before 2016, the North Dunes was way overgrown. There was a lot of invasive trees and plants, and it was, can I say, a big mess. There was a lot of need to create this plan. This plan, it's really night and day. The North Dunes is completely rejuvenated. It's in so much better shape than it was 5-6 years ago. It's getting there. As you saw in Mary's slides, each year we'll make some progress. Some things will get worse, some things get better, but certainly the trend is improving, and we keep on improving. We were going to continue monitoring through 2025, I believe, for the CDP that's through 2025 at least, and at that point we might keep going. Does that answer the question?
I just wanted to make sure that in this transition, it sounds like there were a lot of volunteers and a lot of people being managed to maintain this space, and so the scorecard you put up there, we were behind on the Lupin by a little bit, number of clusters, and total units was close, but the number of clusters was way behind. And there were a few things in there more non-native than you wanted, I think were the two big things I saw on that slide. So I just want to make sure that like a year from now, when they go back and measure this, if
It should be improved, yes.
if you're saying it should be improved. Okay,
We have reason to believe it would be, yes.
okay, perfect.
Okay, well then, let's continue on with orders of business. Now we'll hear the consideration for establishing guidelines for Carmel Beach cleanups and a marine protected area sign.
Back to Mary.
Back over to you, Mary.
Okay, so this was an item that was continued from the September Forest and Beach Commission meeting, and it was supporting establishing guidelines for the Carmel Beach cleanups, as well as adding a new marine protected area sign. So at that September meeting, the Forest and Beach Commission, we introduced those guidelines, and the purpose is to establish a consistent set of guidelines for cleaning up the beach. This commission expressed some concern, as well as the public, and we have those concerns that are detailed in the following few slides. We did go through the beach cleanup table that is now in front of you, and we reconfigured it, and we also kind of recolored it and moved some things around, so you can see that that has been moved for all of the items actually. And then we did update some of the numbers based on some feedback we received from Kelly Francis of Carmel Cares, and updated some of the phone numbers and contacts and that type of information. So I wanted to just go through some of the concerns that were brought up at the last Forest and Beach Commission meeting, and then staff's response to that. And one of them was that concern was expressed that dogs are allowed on Carmel Beach without a leash, and bacteria from the dog waste is deposited on the sand, beach rack, and the driftwood. The dog waste can contribute to the poor water quality and can affect the marine ecosystem, as well as pose a risk to swimmers and other beach goers. So the staff's response is that, yes, we agree that Carmel Beach is a marine protected area, and it's unlawful to injure, damage, take, possess any living geological or cultural marine resource. The cleanup policy recommends removing all the dog waste and leaving the beach rack and the driftwood on the beach, and so that we can have a consistent cleanup guidelines along at the beach. One of the second comments that we are summarizing here is that large driftwood logs have the potential to create hazardous or dangerous situations on the beach and could damage the beach's infrastructure, so the stairs and the seawalls, and that those should be removed from the beach. And the staff believes that the Public Works Department, the Police Department, and the Fire Department respond to public safety hazards at Carmel Beach. The departments are responsible for removing hazardous materials such as hazardous logs, and so we did modify the policy to include removal of public hazards from natural materials. The third comment was that beach fires are prohibited on Carmel Beach but continue to burn illegally, and that creates a hazardous charcoal that's left on the beach and is dangerous to the sand and to the ocean. So the staff's response is that the proposed cleanup policy recommends removal of the charcoal and any burned materials from the beach, and any illegal fires should be reported to the Carmel Police Department.
And they're going to do something about it?
The fourth item is that Carmel Beach is known for its brilliant white sand. Concern was expressed that the color of the sand was changing from a white sand beach to a mix of darker colors. And Carmel staff response is that we just looked into the beach. The white sand comes from offshore rocks called Santa Lucia granodiorite, made up of quartz and other materials. And because the ocean waves pound those rocks into fine sand granules and wash up on the beach, that's how the white sand is created. So that's kind of what that is. Removing the trash from the beach and prohibiting fires and leaving natural would the ecosystem is expected to reduce pollutants over time, as we are proposing in our fire our future fire ban on the beach. And then the next comment, number 5, was that concern was expressed that a large portion of Carmel Beach below the mean high tide line is regulated by the state government, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Protected Area. So the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea is losing local control of the beach. Staff response that the Carmel Bay Marine Conservation Area was established in September of 2007, and it was by the California Fish and Game Commission. It was one of 29 marine protected areas that were adopted in the first phase of the Marine Life Protection Act initiative along California's Central Coast. We were coordinating with some of the regulatory agencies and resource agencies, and they provided some information to us that we thought would be useful. One of them is why MPAs are important and why they exist. And it was a Marine Life Protection Act that was adopted in 1999. And it requires redesign and expansion of California's marine protected areas. It's science-based and ecologically connected network. It's applied to state waters. It's the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is the management agency, and the Fish and Game Commission has the authority to adopt the MPAs. The Marine Life Protection Act goals are to protect biodiversity, rebuild populations, enhance research, education, and recreation, to protect marine natural heritage, manage and enforce sound science, and ecologically connected network. The regional implementation of the California's network of marine protected area. You can see in this slide the years that Central Coast was adopted in 2007, and then came the North Central Coast, and then both the North Coast and the South Coast were adopted in 2012. This next slide is the Carmel Bay State Marine Conservation Area. I think you might have seen this slide last month. And it is basically showing you the area of the marine conservation area, as well as the permitted and prohibited uses. And this is through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So throughout this process, we have contacted various state and federal agencies in preparation of drafting up the policy. And our contacts at the Department of Fish and Wildlife, they provided the relevant regulations that are pertaining to Carmel Beach. And so this slide here was from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, where they provided the actual regulation that states the governing information. They said, because the one issue that we've been going back and forth with is driftwood, and if we can or can't take driftwood from the beach. And so we've had many, many meetings with the regulatory agencies, and they have said that the item does not need to be alive at the time you find it to be considered a marine living resource. It simply needs to occur or be associated with saltwater. So kelp, algae washed up on the beach would be a marine living resource. Driftwood is not a marine living resource. However, it may have a marine living resource growing on it or attached to it. And maybe it doesn't have it today, but it might have it tomorrow. So those are the things that we're recommending to be left on the beach. The NOAA's Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, we also had conversations with the staff there, and they provided the federal regulations section, which defines a sanctuary resource. And they, through correspondence with them, they said that driftwood is considered a sanctuary resource and could be potential habitat for other marine resources. So my next slide, I just wanted to address comments that we all received from Kelly Francis of Carmel Cares. She had written a letter, and she had sent me a draft last night, and then forwarded the official letter to send to all of you today. And so I wanted to just address her comments. Do you want me to read them, or have you all looked at the comments? Okay, you're saying yes? Okay. Okay, so comment number 1. I strongly urge the Commission extend the time for hearing on this matter so that everyone can more thoroughly consider the best city policy concerning the Carmel Beach cleanup. Staff recommends that we move forward with the proposed guidelines so that a clear policy can be advanced to the City Council for beach cleanup management. The second comment was that the city needs to carefully consider why it would adopt a more restrictive policy than is required. It makes no sense to give up power in the situation, especially since future circumstances are not always foreseeable. And staff response is that the proposed policy is not more restrictive than is required by state and federal law. Carmel Beach lies within the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and the Carmel Bay State Marine Conservation Area. Both state and federal staff have confirmed that the proposed guideline for Carmel Beach are consistent with existing laws and regulations. We did send the draft policy to those the people that at CDFW and the sanctuary, and they sent an email stating that. So comment number 3 is the city needs to carefully consider why it would adopt a more restrictive policy than is required. Oops. Wait, isn't it there?
I think it's the right one. It just says comment number 2.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, mine says 3. I must have given you the wrong one. Okay. Oh, no, it is this.
There it is,
yeah, there we go. Okay. The effort is not finished to identify specific regulations versus seemingly contradictory interpretations advice on what cannot be removed from the sanctuary portion of the beach. New information each day. This is relevant because the stated reason for the proposed policy is the desire to be consistent with sanctuary rules. So staff's response is that state and federal regulations provide a clear description of the laws and regulations governing the collection of driftwood below the mean high tide line. Regulators have commented that it appears that the commenter has a strong understanding of the state and federal laws and regulations governing the Carmel Bay, but may be finding them hard to accept. So comment number 4 is that there are multiple references in applicable law to ecosystem-based management, which includes human activity. Yet this is not taken into account in the proposed city policy other than safety concerns. So according to NOAA, one of the primary goals of the ecosystem-based management is balance the diverse, interconnected, and often conflicting needs of human society and the environment. The city's proposed beach cleanup policy addresses the need to remove the human source waste while also protecting the marine resources on the beach. And last but not least, number 5, at a minimum, the city policy should state, upon verbal or written city approval, city-approved support groups may remove natural materials that pose a health or safety concern or otherwise unreasonably interfere with human activity. And the staff's response is the City Public Works Department, Police Department, and Fire Department are responsible for safeguarding the people and the property. The proposed beach cleanup policy will help all of the support groups understand what can be removed from the beach and what needs to be left alone on the beach. So this is the end of this portion of the presentation. And the staff, we did take into consideration the commission and the public comments as we drafted up the cleanup policy, and we anticipate that it'll be brought to the council for final approval by the end of this year. So the second portion or item before you this evening is the new marine protected area sign. This was also an item that was continued from the last Forest and Beach Commission meeting. And so we did already go through who's proposing it, where it's going to be located at the end of Ocean Avenue and the Del Mar parking lot, and it would be put there within the next year. They have 2 options for the sign, and this option 1 is the newer design, and this would be 18 inches by 24 inches. And it's all of the signs that they are proposing are constructed of aluminum, and they are willing to, if the city had expressed interest in putting wood around the sign or posting on a wood post, which they were amenable to as well. So that's option 1. And option 2 was the older design, which is smaller, and it's 12 by 18 inches, and it doesn't have as much written information on it and has less icons as well. So staff has reviewed those sign options and recommends approval of either one of them. And as you had stated last time, that you were interested in having the signs framed with a wood border and a wood post. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mary. Anyone from the commission with questions? Why don't we start with questions related to the first part of the presentation, and then we can get to the sign afterwards.
I do have some questions. Thank you, Mary. That was very well done. I had a question about the tip line and where that call goes. If you're calling the
tide line.
888. Yeah.
Oh, okay, on the sign. So I did call
tip.
that. I was curious myself, and I called it, and it goes to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. They have a hotline that goes, it's kind of like a centralized hotline, and then they take the information, and then they have different CDFW wardens that if they think it's something that needs to be addressed, they send somebody out.
Okay, so they would dispatch it to a local. Okay, because I've actually called in the past. I was just outside of the city limits, and I had called to the police station. I was sort of getting near the point, and the tide was out, and there was a woman with bags poaching. And so I called. I did end up eventually getting to them. There wasn't a sign that was nearby, so I just started with what I thought would be the best way. And they did actually get me to the right person. Unfortunately, by the time that they came out, the person had left.
Yeah.
So these signs can be very important. Are we putting one up in that direction too? I know that's maybe outside of.
The only one proposed is currently at the bottom of Ocean Avenue in the Del Mar parking lot.
Okay.
The group looked at many different places where they were seeing issues, and so they were proposing different signage, at Point Lobos, at Carmel River State Beach, different areas, but they were outside of the city's jurisdiction. So this
one
only...
is outside, but I have seen people when the tide is out doing poaching. I mean, they've got bags and they're putting things in the bag. So, I'm guessing outside of our jurisdiction. So I don't know if we can put signs in that general area.
I mean, we wouldn't have
but
authority. That what's happening is the MPA Foundation group is contacting the different jurisdictions to get approval, and then it goes to the State Coastal Commission for their final approval, and then they'll start implementing the signs.
Okay.
So they probably contacted, if it was in the county's jurisdiction, they probably called the county.
They did, and they actually did come out in a reasonable amount of time, and I took pictures of the person, and I sent the pictures. So there was a person who I could actually text with. She had just left before they got here. So just
okay.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? I guess we're going to flip-flop. We're going to talk about the signs first. Are there any other questions about the signs, either way, about what's been presented so far? And flipping over to back to the policy, I'll start with a question I had in regards to what qualifies as large driftwood that would bring Public Works in to actually remove it. What is the minimum, maximum?
Well, I think what likely happens, and we respond to things all the time, is we get a call, and we would go out and assess the situation. Staff, we'd get a call into Public Works. Someone might be saying that there's a big old, log that's hitting this infrastructure, and so someone from Public Works would go out and see if that's something that we need to remove or cut up or something like that. I think, in our city's general plan, we state that any pieces of large logs should be kept on the beach for picnicking and seating, because we don't want to put formal picnic tables on the beach. So that's something that's in our general plan. But we don't have a size, exact size. I guess something where an adult could sit on it.
That's all I had.
So I'm struggling with the driftwood thing in the policy. I kind of feel like, why, again, different interpretations where the mean high tide line is. It's a 10 to a 15 or a 20-year mean high tide line. So we've probably got, in reality, from a state government review, it's probably like midpoint of the beach. It's really hard for me to make the call on driftwood because the police, fire, and Public Works, at least as it regards to this last year's winter storm, has not taken off the beach what should have been and still needs to be removed from the beach. There is a tremendous amount of oversized logs, fence posts, and what I define as large driftwood. That's a hazard, and it hasn't been removed. And this year, I don't know what to say, because that's my viewpoint, is what's current. And to put a policy now in place and say, oh, well, the fire department and the Public Works and the police department are going to come down and remove what's a safety hazard is if that was happening, I would probably be more apt to say, oh yeah, let's just remove all and have a policy that says you can't remove driftwood. But I just can't wrap my head and my vote around that this year, because it hasn't happened, and that beach needs to have a significant portion of large logs and large pieces of driftwood removed. It's and you know, we can say, oh well, let's just let the sea take it out this year. That's not an appropriate policy for us, given that we're saying that all the stuff should have been removed anyway. So until that happens, I can't give a yes vote to a policy that says you can't remove driftwood until we follow the policy here that we're saying that Public Works and the police department and the fire department are going to remove all the driftwood that's down on the beach right now, because there's a ton of it. And it's just not driftwood, it's fence posts, it's large. I mean, the Pescadero Creek is a real safety hazard too, because there's huge logs down that are blocking the creek. If we get huge flooding going down that river or that creek, it'll back up, and it's going to back up into your and my neighborhoods, Chair Meyer, and I don't like it. And I don't think the people that own that really expensive house right down at the bottom of Pescadero Creek are going to be happy either. And so I don't know how to address that. I don't know whether it's Public Works or whether it's getting someone in that's an expert at this to say, get this off the beach. But I just am struggling with making a policy statement right now when we haven't followed through with what we should be doing as a city to deal with the issues down on the beach. That's my 2 cents as a commissioner.
I think the way I understand what the city's trying to do right here is actually get a policy in place. It doesn't sound like, to me, there was an official policy, and the whole goal here is to get a policy in place so that there can be actionable things done. To your point, it would feel like with a winter of some excessive driftwood and significant storms, the city has had to prioritize a number of things, and perhaps there's still an opportunity where they need to get down, but there's no policy in place. And I think what I understand that the city is trying to do right now is put an official policy in place so that all the efforts from all of the different groups that want to help clean up the beach, they have a guidebook to do something, right? And so I'm definitely on board with supporting putting a policy in place so that people will do the same things, and then of course then hold them accountable, meaning the city, for the work to be done, right?
And I don't disagree with you. I'm struggling with the driftwood issue here. That's the only piece of the policy that I'm really struggling with, because again, Dale Burns at Carmel Cares, the Rotary Club, other people have come forward and said, hey, look, we want to volunteer and get the stuff off the beach. How does that fit into the policy? We're willing to come down and take the driftwood that's dangerous and an eyesore, et cetera, and get it up off the beach and push it somewhere. Because it seems like the city's swamped. They don't have the resources. We as volunteers, how does that map into this policy? Can Carmel Cares come down, and do they need to get blessing from Public Works, or can they remove those big logs and driftwood that's down there and get it off the beach? That's the question. Is that baked into the policy or no? Again, my only issue, I'm all on board with the cleanup policy. I think it's a great idea. I'm just struggling with the driftwood thing, and maybe because it is what it is today. And I would hate to see it be that way in the future.
Kelly?
I was just going to say, it sounds like that there's some overhang from the last winter storms that was not addressed, that's blocking, like that needs to be taken care of, separate from the policy. But I had a question for you, not related to the driftwood, but I remember when we took a walk on the beach, there was a section down towards, I think, that 14th Street area where the water was all pooling in an area that was not typically pooled, and it was becoming brackish and smelly, and it was not what would typically be at the beach. So I think that was also an effect of the winter storms, the way the sand had shifted and leaving those pools of water. So does this policy prevent that brackish water from being channeled back into the ocean? So that that was something I was raised by a few people, that when we were on the walk, right, for example.
Right, and I mean, I just took a walk there yesterday, and I think, it has been there.
It's been
it
there
kind
for
of
a
evaporates
while.
and it gets bigger, and
Right.
it goes back and forth. But I mean, this policy doesn't address that. That's more of what's in our local coastal program implementation plan, and the city, from what I understand, years ago used to dig channels to drain that water, but I believe our coastal development permit doesn't allow us to do that anymore. But and this year we couldn't get any equipment down on the beach because I think we had to rent little things to move the sand up near the North Dunes area, but to get it all the way down the other end of the beach, I think near 7th or 8th Street, it was prohibited from getting any equipment down there.
Well, can I address this a little bit? So part of the issue has to do with the conversations we've had about getting the sand survey. Because in prior years, not necessarily in the last 5 or 6 years, we have not had a large tractor down on the beach moving the sand. And because of the way the storms hit this last winter, it created on the entire beach area, where if we'd had a thing and we'd pushed the sand back up to the riprap and created that back into the ocean flow of things, that water would have flowed back to the ocean and not be situated in those areas, because we have not moved sand in the better part of 5 or 6 years at the level. We've taken a little bobcat, and it's like taking a shovel and dumping it, where we had a huge tractor come down and move the sand into the riprap against the revetments to fill them in to support, the infrastructure. And we did that almost on the entire beach. And that created a slope back to the water. And so even tides, that water would move back to the ocean and not pool.
So that would help the infrastructure issues that we're seeing,
It
right?
would help the infrastructure if
And
we had
keep the water.
riprap in those areas. You push the sand into the riprap and cover it and support it. So it's a first defense against the tides moving.
But importantly also, it wouldn't allow the water to pool like it is, because I have to imagine that
More or less, I think. I can't be an expert on that.
But I would imagine that pooled water that's becoming brackish over time is growing organisms that would not be native or natural to the ocean if they went back out there necessarily, right? I don't know. It seems like
Yeah, no, I mean, I see
cleanup,
dogs in there all the time.
are they allowed to
to
touch that area?
You're not, as I understand it by code, you're not allowed to create channels that channel water back into the ocean.
Right.
If the sand is pushed and set up so that it automatically flows in, then you're good. If it's all part of your, what is that called again, Bob? Sand?
Oh, accretion or?
I can't remember the word. It's sand something when you push it back into the beach and you're creating it for the revetments.
We need Dr. Ravel for this.
Commissioners, I would ask that we stay on task here. I feel like we're deviating from what we're being asked to do, which is to review and approve whether or not we want the city to put a beach policy in place for cleanup that is uniform. And I'm very concerned, as you are, as everyone is, in terms of the infrastructure, et cetera, but this particular conversation should be focused on what's been presented to us so that we can stick to task and also take it to the public. I'm sure there's going to be some public comment, so do we have any other, I think we'll be able to bring it back after we get some public comment and then come forward with whether or not we approve the 2 pieces in this particular order of business. So if there's nothing else for Mary, why don't we open it up? Is that okay? Yep. Got it. All right. From the public, we'll start with chambers, it looks like. Dale?
One more time. I promise it's the last one today. I'm Dale Byrne, speaking as the resident and president of Carmel Cares again. First, regardless of the regulations, and this is, I'm speaking as someone who spent thousands of hours on the beach, and our group has probably spent 10,000 hours on the beach in the last 3 years. We've taken thousands of pounds of dog excrement, and it's unbelievable what our people are finding on the beach, and people are reporting it to me, so I know a lot about what's happening on the beach before I start talking about this. First, regardless of the regulations you might put in place to the public on Carmel Beach, there's virtually no oversight and ability to enforce any rules on the beach. And I could speak because I tried to do that with illegal beach fires, and I think both Shirley and I are out of that business now. Even if there was, in the end, as with beach fires, there's no impact on the offender when all is said and done. In this case, as Kelly has or will probably say, strict universal regulations might be all it's doing is preventing the city and the city support groups from setting their sights pretty high as to how we can keep our beach looking beautiful, safe, and inviting, because a city and the support groups will have to follow this code once it's in place. Second, we found in our interviews with those in charge of the marine sanctuary, and Kelly had all the rest of the meetings, I did not sit through them, so I can't speak for that, that despite the regulations seeming absolute, as we saw in the presentation we just saw, upon further questioning, in other words, if you go in the meeting saying, I'm going to listen to what they say and accept it as a gospel truth, that's what you'll get out of the meeting. But when we go to these meetings, we're practical people because we're out on the beach seeing what's going on and the dangers that we're finding. Upon further questioning, it was determined that common sense evaluation of the situation is really required. The mean high tide line, which I didn't see in this document, did I miss it? Or was it in there? I never saw it in here. It basically says the entire beach. You can't take something off. The mean high tide line, which again I didn't see, was called by the top person at the Marine Sanctuary for this area, was called squishy rather than absolute, meaning they are concerned about what happens where the ocean meets the shore and living organisms that exist there. There is no hard and fast rule, and in general, after further communicating with the person in charge of geoinformation, in other words, he's the person at the Marine Sanctuary that studies the 10-year, and I never got into all the details, but he tells you where that is. Upon further questioning, he said it would be acceptable to assume that half of the beach, west to east, would be a practical way to look at it on Carmel Beach. They also said that regarding driftwood, if it has living organisms on it, you should leave it. And upon further questioning, I said, what does that look like? They said, you'll know it when you see it. There's things crawling on it. There's algae on it. It's a living, breathing thing. If you don't mind, I just have one more sentence. They had absolutely no interest in driftwood that has been sitting on the beach for months and is being used to build forts along the bluff, or shards of wood that are making the beach uncomfortable for people without sandals at the beach. And I have some, if you want, I can do a presentation at some point. I've got hundreds of pictures that show what all this looks like. Once again, they said common sense rules and was the general way they view things, not hard and fast rules that remove flexibility to keep our beach beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. It doesn't look like there's anyone else from Chambers that would like to make a comment, so I see Shirley Moon, you've had your hand up.
Yes, I would like the commission to postpone or deny adoption of these guidelines. There is no harm done by a delay, whereas adoption of the wrong guidelines has long-term consequences. It should be no surprise that with 7 or 8 governmental entities weighing in on their interpretations of marine sanctuary law, that there would be several points of view. However, many or most of these entities do agree that the city can develop their own guidelines above the high mean tide line using common sense. Although it would be easy to just adopt one size fits all for the entire beach, it would be a mistake. As far as I can determine, the basic rules for the marine sanctuary are currently being honored, and there is full intention of abiding by their guidelines as they get better defined. Right now, the only issue to be sorted out is driftwood above the mean high tide line. There are many reasons why it makes sense to remove it. I'd be happy to read that list if requested. If the most restrictive policies being presented is adopted, I have these questions. If driftwood is an essential component to the beach ecosystem, is that benefit lost when the driftwood is piled up or made into forts or stuck vertically in the sand when dogs pee all over it? If it is illegal to remove driftwood from the beach, is it also illegal to move it to the bluffs, as has been done by visitors on the beach? If it is illegal to touch driftwood and it compromises the beach ecosystem if it's moved or removed, Is the city ready to start monitoring the movement of driftwood? How will we admonish people for moving driftwood out of the way so that they can toss a football or a frisbee without stepping on sharp sticks? Will the Coastal Commission view such restrictions as a limitation on recreational access, which they are very keen to protect? I wonder which is worse for the beach ecosystem, dog feces or fewer pieces of driftwood. I suspect that dog feces cause more damage to the ecosystem of the beach and the ocean than the absence of driftwood. So why isn't an aggressive maintenance program being presented along with these guidelines? A plan of action to address the out-of-control trash and dog waste will be the only real protection for Carmel Beach and the Marine Sanctuary. Let's get this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. And let's see, is there anyone else online that would care? Let's see, Kelly Francis's hand went up quickly. Kelly?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I won't reiterate everything that I submitted in writing, so don't worry about that. But I am Kelly Francis, and I've lived here full time, and I've been cleaning trash off the beach at least weekly for more than 2 years. And so I'm the lead volunteer for the Carmel Cares Beach Pickup Posse. And just to reassure everyone is very environmentally conscious, including me, and we absolutely haven't picked up anything that would violate any Marine Protection Act rules, et cetera. What I was talking about in my written comments was the jurisdiction of the city, not the MPA, or not the sanctuary, which is above, as Shirley said, above mean high tide line. And with respect to the law, I'm still learning. This is a complicated area, and I'm getting there, but I keep daily hearing new interpretations, including one yesterday that I never heard before. So I'm trying to separate out just the law from people's interpretations or advice about the law. And I think that the common sense above the mean high tide, well, first of all, everybody says they don't care about above the mean high tide line because that is city jurisdiction. And I don't like to give the city lots of authority, but on the other hand, what I proposed as sort of a sample example of the type of ordinance that perhaps should be considered, and I do think this requires more time. It adds like health in, because that might be different from safety. City support groups roles are evolving and they need to be included or discussed, I believe. And then this consideration of human activity, which is allowed by code, and definitely can affect unforeseeable could give rise to unforeseeable situations beyond safety concerns. And so I'm concerned about the city giving up its right to make those changes or decisions when they come, and within very narrow terms, but beyond that which is proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Anyone else online? I don't see any hands, so that will close the public comment of that and bring it back. Commissioners, again, what we've been asked here to do, there's two pieces in this particular order of business. First is to approve guidelines for proposed Carmel Beach cleanup policy, and then the second is to approve one of the two options for the MPA sign. So why don't we get the sign out of the way? I feel like we're 50%, but we won't be, but let's feel like it. So anyone care to kick that off?
Well, I like the sign that's in blue. I think it gives more information and it'll be bigger, and I just think it should be more than one place, but I would like much more than the kind of homely brown one, which isn't so noticeable.
Other thoughts?
I mean, I kind of like the second one. It's a little more, I would just want to make sure that, reporting violation numbers work. Mm-hmm. Because I think if we're going to put it up there, it's got to have something that really works, right? Mm-hmm. but I like it because it's very big and clear to read. Where the other one, I mean, people are going to look at it and go, I'm not going to poke my eyes into this because it's got too much verbiage to it. So if we only have a choice of these two options, I'm more going down option 2.
May I ask a question? Are these prescribed by the state? These are the only options?
Well, I know, Tamara, it looks like you're thinking about it going back and forth, Adam, so I'll just make a comment. Mine, I'm of the opinion that this, as colorful as it is, from the first time I saw it, it just like there's too much going on. I really like the simplification, and I kind of like the older school sign, which I felt like when it was presented to us, it had a little bit closer proximity to our own character. This felt just kind of too much to me. Lots of great information, not saying that there isn't, but hopefully this QR code on the brown sign, if that's what we approve, can provide that information for those that are hoping for it. But anyway, I'm inclined to ask for the brown over the blue.
It doesn't seem to me that it gives enough information.
I know.
The thing about the blue one, I don't know that that a lot of the information is that useful. I think that people know, when I first looked at this and I looked at non-consumptive activities and entry okay, and I just thought, I know that I can swim here. I know, it didn't seem as useful as I think that they may want it to be.
It's like if you've ever been in a foreign country and you see signs that are translated into English.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what?
I think I probably just look at the people
Non-consumptive
in the
activities.
beach. Non-consumptive, I know. So I tend to like the sort of old school brown sign more myself.
Commissioner Kelly.
And I would like to see a couple of them. I actually would like to see more than just one.
They only have 2.
Pardon me?
There are only 2 government
Only
signs.
she's saying more than one sign actually put up.
Quantity,
Yeah.
more than quantity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would rather just have none, but
Only
since
because
we're
of
required to have one, I mean, come on up.
only because of the reporting. Just if that were a little bit further down the beach, even by the bathrooms, I mean, I don't know. But because I've had the occasion to use it, I think it would be useful. And I could have walked back that far because I was actually trying to see where I could go or who I could get some help from. So even just to walk back to that area would have been better than walking all the way back down. So that would be my only other suggestion I would have.
The location by the 14th Street bathrooms is actually a really good idea because the tide pools
It's just beyond.
down is just beyond there. It's where people probably often access to take things, right? Like in this picture is more relevant towards the tide pools.
Yeah.
Is that an option for us, Mary, to be making a suggestion for more than one sign?
Or put the only sign
Or
there.
where the location of it?
Something I can ask the group that was proposing where the locations were. I think they, did like a state initiative up and down the state and figured out the most used areas, and that's why they picked Ocean Avenue. But
Got it. Right.
yeah.
So you could,
I can
the
ask
commission
them.
could phrase it that, you support, say, the brown sign and direct staff to pursue additional signs if possible.
Alternate locations.
Or an or a primary location. at
Well, I think the
14th Street
primary
access.
location is the one
The
that,
Ocean
they prescribed that one.
Yeah.
Right,
So
'cause
the
that's
issue is can we do a second one?
Secondary.
Right.
And if that's what the commission wants, we can certainly try that.
Got it. So did you have a sign preference?
I've just spent a lot of my career in public health communications and working with regulatory bodies, and I can tell you the blue one, which is very pretty, is likely developed by consensus, where every group kind of got their piece into the sign. From a communications standpoint, if these were tested side by side, the brown side, there's no question. The brown side, well, I don't really love the brown color. It would be far more, it would likely test far more successfully in communicating the message on that sign. People would understand there's a reporting place, and they would understand it was, don't take things off the beach better.
Sarah, are you going to be okay with the brown sign?
Yeah, I'm okay with
All right.
that.
Well, then, with
Sarah's
that
our
in
most
mind,
progressive.
we've got a consensus. Dale, I see your hand.
I promised I wouldn't speak, but this is a whole other issue. You're basically voting on two things.
Correct.
There was no public comment on this part.
There was.
It was open for either, actually. The public
Right,
comment.
okay.
It was open for
But
either.
we're
I
only
got cut
talking
off
about
at
the
3
sign
minutes.
right
I mean,
now.
they're only,
We had 3 minutes to speak to either or both.
it's a big thing to us, guys. As part of the $100,000 that the city allocated, the city council allocated, and we're raising $100,000 to match it. Part of that project is Hardscape on Scenic Pathway, which is replacing all of the signage. We already have done the first sign with tasteful wood things that I made. And I'd hate to see all of a sudden we start picking another sign when Shirley's spending a lot of time analyzing all the existing signs, coming up with a common theme, very simple, very sedate, very peaceful on the pathway, which is Shirley's thing. Just start putting up other signs when we haven't even finished the analysis of the signs that we have, which are pretty bad at the current time. I mean, this would be the best sign we have because other than the main one. So our comment, Shirley had to go, I'm sorry. But our comment would be to put this off as well and include it with the sign package because there's really no big hurry in any of this. But if you want to put up the sign, it's fine with us. Thanks.
Okay. I guess, Mary, a question then in terms of the legality. So it's MPA that said we have to put up a sign. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, it's through the MPA. Yeah, it's the MPA collaborative, and they've been working with Fish and Wildlife, and they have gone through and identified where the signs are, where they'd like to them to be located.
Got it. And then is the city held, and please let me know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but is the city held liable for not putting a sign up? Is there some sort of a time frame that we've been given to get the sign up, or else is that how it, I mean, I don't know how it would work, so I'm just curious. That it's brought to us to do, is it a suggestion to please put it up, or where are we with that?
I know that the state can install it. They hire contractors to come and, do it up and down the state. But if the city wanted to add their own touches to it and put wood around it and put it on wood posts and, make it more Carmel, it didn't sound like they were opposed to that, that they were agreeable to work with us on the best way we
Weren't they talking about a year or two out anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't like it's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, it has to
and
go
knowing the
close to
government, this
close.
could be another 3 years.
Well, so
then
that's
based on
really
what
good to
Dale
know,
said, if there's-
right?
Absolutely. They said this wasn't immediate. That was
Then
what
if
they
there's
said,
a sign, if there's actually a sign program underway with Carmel Cares, then
I'm not
then maybe
familiar
we
with
just
that.
wait, because I think we can get a better sign than this, and it can communicate importantly what we need to communicate.
Well, maybe.
I remember,
I understood from the
Kelly
government
wasn't
there
at
were
the
only
meeting.
two signs.
You weren't at the
There's this
meeting though,
sign or
right?
there's this sign,
Yeah, the
right?
government's
That's it.
given us two sign
That's it.
choices.
This is a statewide
Correct.
Right.
sign deal.
So what
this is what you got.
what I think and what I'm hearing from Mary, it sounds like what we can do is approve which sign we prefer, or we can at least say this is the sign we prefer. That's our recommendation back to staff. And then knowing that the implementation period could be up to over a year, that we could also say we would recommend that once that sign has been confirmed, that we can have it, that we work with
Carmel Cares and what they're
well,
doing.
whoever
It's
is
not a dollar sign.
really wanting to be involved in the kind of the customization, knowing that the sign itself is the sign, right? And
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe we can take this sign and we can test this sign against another sign for key messaging and
well, no,
decide,
that's
like,
the thing, though. They told us
State
these are the
those-
signs,
these are the
meaning
signs.
MPA.
This is
There was
state
the gal
mandated.
was.
So I've had the FDA also tell me this is how it has to be, and been able to achieve a different result with data. So I think if there is a sign program underway that Carmel Cares is doing, right, then maybe, if this is years away, maybe just delaying and not,
Well, I mean, everybody's seen the work, the signs like around the trash cans that are,
Yeah.
I mean, they're nice. I think what Dale is referring to is more like of a color palette and material palette choices, right? That are for, I wouldn't say, I don't want to use this the wrong way, less consequential. That's not what I mean, but just things like, hey, don't litter, right? But it has the flavor, right, for the city. So
if this was interpreted in that and it tested equally and that's what the city put up, it's unlikely that the state would come, and I'm just guessing, the state would likely come and tell us to take it down.
Let's just go ahead and make a decision.
I think as our decision, I'm going to propose here that we accept that we want to do a sign and that we, given the timeline as proposed by the state, that we leave our options open with regards to any additional signage that may be proposed in coordination with our overall signage at the beach. And leave it at that.
So that's the recommendation that you want to make to staff?
Yes.
Got it. Now, only because Dale was given an opportunity to step up and speak after we had closed it, someone online has raised up their hand. It's Danielle. So I'm going to open it back up and allow her to make her comment before we move forward, if you guys are okay with that. All right, Danielle, I see your hand is up, so go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I just figured out how to raise my hand. I'm with the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and I'm working with the Marine Protected Area Collaborative Network on this project. And it's not mandated by the state. It's part of a statewide effort to put marine protected areas signs along the coast in these areas, but you're not obligated to install a sign. We are just trying to improve compliance of the marine protected areas throughout the state. And so this area was identified as a high visitation area that could use signage. So the grant that we have is through the Ocean Protection Council. So you're free to, do your own signage if you would like. But we are just tied to our grant timeline, which it does go for another year, but we have to have the signs fabricated and installed within our grant timeline. So it may not align with if you decide to postpone, but I just wanted to raise that and clarify that you are not obligated if you don't want to do a sign in this area.
Well, thank you very much for the input. We appreciate
Can I ask
that.
you a question, Danielle? If we wanted to do that had a lot of the same signage, but in our own design of this, would that have to get approved by you to post it, or could we do whatever we wanted as far as it address the marine protected area?
So the California Department of Fish and Wildlife likes to and wants to approve any signage around marine protected areas or about marine protected areas, and so we work with them, and that's why we've only done these two sign templates. Because we have to get all our signage approved by CDFW prior to fabrication. So given it's a statewide effort, we can't kind of deviate into more than a couple of templates throughout the state. So if you wanted to, you can certainly use a lot of the same elements, and that would, if you use the same elements that we've been using, then I think that should be approved by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. But if you deviate, you could always reach out to us and we could help kind of facilitate that approval process. But yeah, CDFW is the one that has the ultimate say on marine protected areas and the outreach around them as well.
Great.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Danielle, what does this grant cover with regards to the sign? You mentioned that there's a grant for this.
I'm like paying for it.
Yeah.
Are they paying for the sign and for the placement, or what exactly are they paying for?
Yeah, it was, we started off doing a signage evaluation looking at the current marine protected area signage throughout the state and kind of evaluating elements of the signs and kind of figuring out which aspects of the signs were most successful at conveying compliance of the marine protected areas regulations. And from that, we designed the blue sign, which is kind of the piecemeal, as you mentioned, aspects of the other signs that conveyed the best aspects of the regulations and were most eye-catching towards the public.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I might not have made my question clear. What is being paid for by this grant? Are they paying for the sign, to place the sign? What exactly is being covered in this grant with regards to the sign?
Sorry, the evaluation was one aspect of it, and now we're moving towards the signage fabrication. So they're paying for the production of about 150 signs throughout the state. And the installation of those as well.
Okay. And if we requested this second sign, is that something that would need to be approved and through the grant process, or?
Yeah, we can kind of evaluate that. We just need to stay obviously within our budget and production of the other 150 signs throughout the state, so we can look at the budget and see if we can provide another one as well. The next step in this process is to go before the California Coastal Commission. So as part of this, we would need the city's approval to install the signs, and then go before the Coastal Commission and present it for a consolidated coastal development permit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. So, boy, it really feels like suddenly we can move in a different direction than what we were potentially considering.
Yeah.
I know you were making a recommendation. Did you want to even perhaps alter it even more?
I think I'd like to, again, my recommendation would be to table this issue. And we'll revisit this in further down the road here, and maybe in consultation with Carmel Cares about signage and Public Works about the signage. What's kind of the plan, and then re-bring it up about what maybe we want to do with regards to that. Is that?
I'm fine to do that, but it sounds as though they're paying for it. So either way,
It's minimal dollars. I don't. Carmel Cares will pay for this. If that's what
I know. So okay.
We're not talking about.
So wait to see. No.
Could
I think we have a consensus for that recommendation. Right? Is there something additional that you had?
I was just going to amend the motion to say I think we should table the beach policy as well. It sounds like there's
I can't hear you.
I said I think my recommendation is that we also table taking action on the beach policy today as well, that seems like there's some practical and common sense considerations that should be included in that for above the mean high tide line to provide direction that would make people more all of our volunteer groups more comfortable.
So in terms of making the second recommendation, I think that we should have some discussion around it before moving forward on that, because the way I understand what we're trying to do is put a policy in place, and it's a policy. It's not as if it's going to be something that can't be changed, right? But we don't have a policy currently, and I think that's what it feels like, as I understand. That feels like that's the issue, right? Nobody knows like what can you or should you or shouldn't you take off, and there's different factions that want to take off things and others that don't. And so I understand that the city is just attempting to put a policy in place as a starting point. And we talked about it briefly earlier. It's like put the policy in place and then start holding them accountable, the city accountable for, hey, by the way, there's something that's been identified that's large driftwood and it's hazardous. What and when is it going to be removed? And begin that process, and understanding, of course, the restraints and limitations that might be on the city. Perhaps the city then is able to direct some of our volunteer groups, like, okay, yeah, this is approved to be removed. But the problem today is there isn't a policy, right?
And I think one of the things that concerns me from the discussion today is that Carmel Cares, which has a significant contribution on the beach and keeping it clean. We heard from multiple members of Carmel Cares that they have expressed concerns about the policy as written, and that with an opportunity to improve the policy, and that absent having the policy, they're in a better position to take care of the beach right now, right? Which is, I think what we heard is that the hard and fast rules that might be in this policy, right, would prevent the care of our beach, right? Like, I think this conversation's about how do we make sure that we include in the policy practical and common sense considerations for removals of driftwood above the mean high tide line, for example, as opposed to a policy that just says driftwood cannot be removed from the beach, period, no matter what, right? I think there are it's the language of the policy and the interpretation of that language, right? And so I guess I heard input from community members who are on that beach a lot, that they would prefer some reconsideration of some of the language, particularly in the area above that mean high tide line in terms of what we can do.
But don't we look to
So-
our environmental programs manager to be the expert in this? This is the person who's reaching out to the agencies that study this and think about this, and we were provided comment to the fact that driftwood is determined to be something that is a part of the ecosystem. Now, again, barring things that are determined by the city as to be hazardous, I think, shouldn't we trust in the fact that a policy can be put in place by the person that's responsible to lead that charge? And it certainly seemed to me like we were presented material that addressed someone who championed this notion of postponing a policy, right? And I felt like it was addressed in a way that made sense to me in terms of, putting a policy in place that kind of living and breathing, I imagine, in anything. I didn't hear like hard, dead, can't touch it, don't do it. I didn't hear that. I heard there's still a opportunity, and I had written it down, what qualifies, that's why I asked my first question was, hey, what qualifies as large driftwood, or hazardous? And hopefully that could just become something that the city and Public Works, combined with whether or not if it's the fire department or whoever comes together to make those decisions, could direct those volunteer agencies that are working on the beach all the time and giving all those hours to be able to remove, right? As opposed to just, hey, let's remove this, or no, let's not remove that. And so it feels to me like kind of everybody's doing a bunch of different things. And the city is just saying, let's put a policy in place so that we have some rules to follow. And by the way, as the person that's responsible for this, we've contacted the multiple agencies that have the touch around this, and they're all saying the same thing.
But I think we did hear different points of view about the large driftwood in today's conversation. We heard different points of view regarding the driftwood above the mean high tide line.
Meaning from the public or but didn't seem that way in terms of what the material we were presented, but
from the public we did.
Right. And I think the public's comment is relevant if they're having meetings with these agencies to talk about, like someone from the public who takes the initiative to meet with one of our local agencies about this policy, their input and their conversation with that agency is relevant.
Sure, and I wouldn't discount it, and that's not what I'm doing, but also I would argue that their approach to those agencies and the questions they're asking aren't necessarily going to be the same as the way the city's approach is, right? Which most likely is a lot more uniform and from a city's policy of taking consideration the laws, first of all, but then also, now the next step, safety for the public. And whether or not that was or wasn't how the public went about asking those questions, I feel like, you're talking about kind of, they're not the same approaches, I guess. I just feel like.
Well, I just take the meetings.
Let me say something.
Oh, sorry. Please.
Since you guys my understanding was that whoever was talking was saying that above the mean line, we have choices, and we aren't limited to the state. So.
Me too, yeah.
That would be nice to be explicitly stated in the policy, for example, is what I heard from one of our commissioners. It's what I heard from some of the public. It's what I heard from from two members of the public.
The mean
in this
high
one.
tide line, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, like, I remember in the last month's report, it sure seemed like the mean high tide line, like, was all the way up against.
But that's incorrect. I mean, again, we heard from the public, and I've heard it through other people, that it's a squishy line. And it's, and again.
Well, I would ask that, since Mary's the person that was talking to the agencies, did you hear them tell you that's a squishy line? I mean, I just feel like, we hear that from the public, but this is the person actually that's responsible.
You talked to somebody who wasn't.
But we talked, again, Dale Byrne through Carmel Cares talked with a number of people that are a part of the MPA and the sanctuary about, what isn't, and then Mary has as well. So we've got, multiple people touching these agencies, and the interpretations are all a little different from one another. And all we want to do as a commission is make sure whatever we're going to do, if we're going to set a policy, is that we align it with something that, from a common sense perspective, works for us as a city from the mean high tide line due east.
Great. So actually, it sounds like we're getting somewhere in terms of making a recommendation, because that's what we're supposed to do here, right?
I'm fine with everything on this recommendation except the driftwood.
Yeah.
So if we want to strike the driftwood out of here and propose that as a policy right today, and that's the policy for cleanup, I'm a go.
So,
but on the driftwood issue, I'm not a go.
I mean, again, we're just making a recommendation to staff. We're not going to be writing this, at least at this point, right? So
well, it's going to get recommended to council, right?
Right. The city's going to take it, right? So we're going to either, we can provide some language guidance of and perhaps it's to that degree. I'm not exactly sure. It sounds like, again, I have to look to the expert who spent the time and did the research and is hired by the city to go out and get that information and bring it back to us. And that information that she provided didn't tell me squishy lines, at least not me anyway. It told me that there's some rules. Now, where that mean high tide line is, I mean, maybe that needs to be a firm part of the recommendation, that we're making sure that that's clear in the policy, right? And I think that sounds, I mean, I would imagine that Mary would probably be amenable to that. She understands that if that is the rule, then that's okay, right? But where that line is, I don't know. And so who does? Who can tell us? So you said it's incorrect.
Let's see what she says.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You're here. We want to hear from you.
So the mean high tide is determined by NOAA. I mean, there's a lot of different agencies that look and see what the mean high tide line is. They said, when you go down, you look at the beach, it's typically where you do see the driftwood line on the beach. And when I go down, I look at Carmel Beach, it's depending upon where you are on the beach. Some of it goes all the way up near the cliffs, and then other parts of the beach, it's, further away in the sand dune area.
Yeah, and it depends on how many tourists have gone down and grabbed the driftwood and dragged it over towards the bluffs. I mean, because we haven't cleared it off, it's all over the place. It's people use it for building their forts.
She's talking about the line, though, not the...
Huh?
But I think when we consider the line being up to the seawall, that's a very slippery slope, because it then causes this perception that the entire beach can't be touched. It's kind of like the way it's written here, including driftwood of all, in capital for emphasis, of all sizes. It's saying you never take driftwood off this beach without calling Public Works or the police or fire. So if you said below if you identify that mean tide line.
I've
like
heard
that,
in other jurisdictions through California Department of Fish and Wildlife, City of Laguna Beach, they were having an issue with some residents wanting to clean and groom the beach and, rake it and clean it up. And they had a consultant come in and decide where exactly that mean high tide line is, because the city wanted jurisdiction, above the mean high tide line. Yeah. So they actually hired someone to come in, determine that. And from staff's perspective, and how it's a changing with sea level rise and everything, we wanted to just develop a consistent policy across the beach. And that's what our recommendation was, because this is something that is going to constantly be changing. So you don't want to have to come back every year and go, well, now the mean high tide line is 2 inches more up the beach.
But the benefit of that in Southern California.
What was your recommendation? Say that again, please.
staff's recommending that we have a consistent guideline across the whole beach. And so we're recommending that we don't remove driftwood from the beach, that it remains on the beach.
Period.
I think that's wrong.
Outside of the
But I think
Outside of health hazards.
if you look at
or-
the Southern California beaches, above that line, they have equipment on the beaches, they rake the
Right.
beaches, they keep them beautiful looking, they have the track, they don't just move sand, they have the, they collect the kelp, right?
They
like
import sand, they collect, yeah, they
They
clean
put
it up.
sand, they put white
Yeah.
sand, and
Right.
they keep those beaches looking gorgeous above the mean tide line where the city has jurisdiction. So this all, and I think we were remiss this past winter by not removing some of the driftwood that came in through the storms. I think that's what Commissioner Sowers' comment was. And this, how do you say, all driftwood? I think that's a
Can't touch it.
contentious point here, right? I wouldn't be willing to support that based on what I've heard.
I'm dying to make some comments.
Would you like to make some comments?
I think I'm up to 9,
Did
but.
you raise your hand? I didn't see it.
Oh.
There it is.
You've been awfully silent, Bob.
Thanks, Barry. Well, Bob, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Okay.
Mean high tide line. I don't care where it is, if it's on 1 inch on the beach or if it's on San Antonio, it doesn't matter. We're going to have one policy for all of the beach. Right now we have 0 policies for all of the beach. We're not going to have one east or west of the high tide line. We're going to have one policy. We're going to go to the city council with one policy. Hopefully we have the support of the Forest and Beach Commission on this policy. If we don't, we're going to go to the forest, or we're going to go to the city council with our recommendation for the policy. Driftwood. It is very clear, it is not subject to interpretation, that the driftwood is it's illegal to pick up the driftwood wherever the heck the mean tide line is. Who cares? We can't pick up the driftwood. Another comment. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife Services warden was going to be here in the audience today. At the last minute, he couldn't come. He has the power of citation. There was a question about how are we going to enforce this? Well, we've alerted the Fish and Wildlife Service that we're playing games on this beach. Now they're going to come and start citing people who are picking up driftwood off the beach. Policy. This is a policy. This is not the ordinance. This is not going to, it may become an ordinance someday, but it is not yet an ordinance. We're recommending that the Forest and Beach Commission support this policy. Yes, we've heard comments before. We have additional comments. Great. But we're going to take this to the city council, and we're going to enforce this policy. The city staff, all departments, all our city contractors, and all official support groups must support the policy. Regardless of what it says, we're going to. We will have a warden potentially patrolling the beach at any time. Could have been today.
You could have saved us a whole lot of arguing.
Well,
if
I
you
know,
told
I
us
was,
that in the
I
beginning.
kept quiet for so, I kept quiet for so
City
long.
council meeting, and I'll bring up the
That-
same
that's-
issues we brought up here.
That's fine, that's fine.
Because I think it's just.
Well, hang on.
That's fine.
He's got only. He said he had 9, and he's only got through 3. So let's
I think I'm 4.
4. Okay.
4.
Yeah.
I think I did more than 4. The fence post, and we have actually, last winter, it's interesting that, hear that from a commissioner. If you recall, last winter, we had 150-something trees get knocked down. So if there was fence posts on the beach, well, we had 150 trees in the streets. We did have our priorities. Yes, there was more than fence posts. There was a whole deck with wood nails sticking out. We had, I was going to mention in our staff report, we had 3 dead seals at the end of last month. We have all kinds of things appearing on the beach. We take care of it the best we can. We don't have unlimited resources to keep the beach clean. Raking the beach. The Southern California area that has nice, wide, clean sand is most likely not a marine sanctuary area. So that's comparing apples with oranges, in my opinion. Saltwater, brackish, smelly, horrible water. Yes, it's smelly, it's stinky, it's terrible, it's horrific. If it's salt water, my understanding is that's natural. It came from the ocean. Yes, granted, I 100% agree with Commissioner Sowers. If money was no object, we put bulldozers every day and push lots of sand up on the revetments and protect the revetments, protect those seawalls. and all the water would always flow out into the ocean. We don't have that luxury financially. There was references to the sign program. Yes, Mr. Byrne was correct that Carmel Cares and the city are working on a new project. Project number 1 was the scenic guardrails. That came out great. Win-win.
Really great.
Beautiful. Next project, which is not yet defined, potentially will have signs. That's not yet a firm fact. Yes, there's been discussions. I know Carmel Cares is working diligently on identifying each and every sign. There's no sign program yet. That's a potential. It's not a fact. Am I done? Am I being too mean?
No, I mean, your
Okay.
passion level from here to here as it got out.
Okay.
That's all. That's good.
All right.
I think everyone appreciates your comments.
Do you have a couch?
Well, yeah. That's part of the cookies and the milk at recess.
All right, I'm done.
In terms of the continuation of the discussion here for us, again, what's been requested of us is to approve guidelines for a proposed Carmel Beach cleanup policy. I think we can add to that in a recommendation. In terms of, or we can deny it outright if everybody, apparently it's not going to matter. We're just going to be making our statement about how we feel about what's been presented to us. I'm inclined to side with wanting to have a policy. First of all, I prefer actually knowing what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, as opposed to just kind of doing it and getting in trouble. And it feels like, for the most part, everyone's on board. So do we want to make some recommendations about the language as it relates to driftwood? And that's just part of our recommendation with an approval. And it is what it is in terms of what the staff chooses to do with that. Sounds like, they've got a plan regardless. So where do we want to be on record? Where's everybody else here?
We could add something like, how does the sentence go? In order to remove all human sources. And,
spend the money on a consultant to establish the mean high tide line? I mean, is that, so that there can that be part of that? And where can we find some common ground here, guys?
I mean, again, I'm on board with the policy. I just have an issue with the driftwood issue until we can clearly define what organic live driftwood is that shouldn't be removed from the beach.
Okay, and so
As defined
do we
by
trust
the-
Public Works to be able to do that? I mean, isn't that what we want to do? We want to give them the authority to have a policy in place that can then determine, hey, that is removable and that's not removable?
How do you manage that?
It doesn't look like they want to remove any driftwood from the beach. That's my.
what do you think?
I said it doesn't seem like the city wants to remove any driftwood from the beach, based on this policy and the conversation.
Because we don't want to get a citation, that's why.
So outside of...
I'm not sure that if it's above the mean high tide line and it's doesn't have living material, I'm not sure that we'd get a citation, right? Like, there's an open question here on the driftwood. Clearly based on some of the public comment of people who were highly vested in beach cleanup in our community.
I just think it's the most prolific aspect of what's down on the beach subject to seaweed.
Yeah.
And I think that to make an overall policy on this without a really clear understanding of what we're making the policy around is not in the best interests of the residents in the city, as a whole. And I'm struggling with that issue.
Well, we also really need to know what rights we have above the mean tide line.
And that is our job. Ultimately, that is our job here.
Is there
And I'm
something that we could
passionate.
word, because it sounds like this is going to go to the city council regardless, is there something that we could put together right now that we can suggest that they consider when this goes before City Council?
It sounds like the topic of driftwood, to me, would benefit by further investigation and crafting language that we think meets the state regulations and is also sensitive to the needs of our community and our beach. And I think there was a request, right, to continue this topic that was brought to us before the meeting. And I think, it's interesting, based on all the public comment we've received, to me, there seems like a basis for some further investigation, specifically on the driftwood, right?
When is this supposed to go to City Council, Bob?
It was tentatively good to go in November. It could be bounced to December, but before the end of the year.
So we're probably best to say something now then, just in case. It's being heard next month, do you think, or?
Not necessarily.
I'm curious what Bob thinks. If we want to be heard.
Staff
Staff
is ready to take this to the City Council.
That's what I'm wondering. If we want to make sure that we're heard, we may not want to prolong it.
Every comment will be informed to the City Council.
Okay.
And of course, it'd be a public meeting and people can.
That we can go
there
to
as
the
well.
public. Okay.
So can we make can we approve a beach cleanup policy with the recommendation that additional research is done into the definition of what is considered non-removable and removable driftwood from the beach?
Above the mean tide line.
Well, I mean, I would just think just in general.
In general.
I just wonder if we approve the policy that's been developed, with the exception of driftwood, and our statement around driftwood be that we would like to see further investigation on that particular, because if you read the policy presently, I mean, it says natural driftwood of all in cap sizes, and then if you look at the asterisks, it says in the event any natural material poses a safety concern, such as large logs, go to Public Works, the police, or the fire department, they can remove them. But I think what we're talking about is the delineation related to the Mead timeline, and what's below and above that that's affected by the policies of the Marine Sanctuary, right?
Correct.
And I think the point of view that the mean tide line is the seawall, which means the entire beach, I feel like that's the perspective that the city is taking, and I'm not necessarily sure that that's the best and appropriate common sense perspective for the town, right? It's simple because it says, oh, you don't remove any driftwood. Okay, we don't have. Then it makes the implementation of this policy much easier, because it removes work from the city to remove driftwood, right? But we have volunteer organizations that have said that they would help remove driftwood. We have differing points of view about the interpretation on the Marine Sanctuary of the driftwood. I think that there can be additional research is warranted.
Well, I mean, the question becomes like, how much is too much, and what, I mean, so we happen to have a beach that got a lot of storm activity, and, I've lived here for, over 30 years of my life, and there have been times that there's a lot of driftwood on the beach, and then there's times that there's not a lot of driftwood on the beach, and sure, there's, in those years, there were a lot of fires that took place that probably took care of that driftwood, but I'm pretty sure everybody that's participated in this conversation doesn't want that to happen, right? So the question, I guess, becomes like, well, what can you remove? How much do you remove, right? Which, is it this big or is it that big? I mean, you start getting into. So I understand the reasoning around the policy, but I also saw that there was some softness in it. It wasn't 100% dead to rights, like no exceptions. Hey, by the way, something's hazardous, call the city so they can remove it, right? And thus, if a policy's in place, then you start to hold the city accountable, like, hey, by the way, you've been called and you've been called and you've been called, and these things aren't being done, right? And, you get a fair response from the city that says, hey, by the way, we only have so much resources. And then perhaps some of the community volunteers are able or being given the authority to, hey, they can remove that, and we get some soft. I just like to see a policy and put it in place, but with let's put the language in. I mean, I think everyone's on the same page about wanting some more research around driftwood, and we can just make that part of our approval and recommendation, right? So,
but I don't think we should support the driftwood language that's in here presently, because I think that would be for me at least, not representative of what we've heard in the discussion today.
Great. So how do we want
do
to,
the motion.
how do we want to word, I don't think, are we making a motion? I don't believe this is a motion warranted. I think
I
we're,
don't know, is it?
was it? I don't believe so. Is it?
It's
I
a
mean,
recommendation.
I think we're just making a, we're just
Yeah, we're
making.
still
yeah.
recommendations.
I mean, it's a recommendation.
There
so
hasn't
I-
been a motion.
I think we can, oh, well, so we're ultimately going to make a motion?
Oh, I sure hope so.
Okay. Got a lot of time. It's not 8:30.
I'll make it, but I can't.
I'll make it.
We're getting attrition online. Is there wording that then we're all comfortable with, and do you want to try to put the semantics there together to make that happen? Or wordsmith this, because it sounds like
I think
we're all on the same page.
as a commission, we're on board with a beach cleanup policy. So
Okay.
we're in agreement that we believe
Support.
a beach cleanup policy is warranted.
Mhm.
But we need to get a better definition of the natural driftwood that can and cannot be removed from the beach.
So we're in a motion, hypothetically, we could say that we move that the city goes forward with a,
I think Public
Beach
Works is
cleanup,
going to go forward
a
with
Carmel
gardens.
Beach cleanup guideline policy.
well, I think you're right. So what does that mean? Don't we still want to at least get provided the opinion? I think that's what they're asking from us.
Yeah, the city is the right thing to say, I think.
Let's try it one more time. Okay, so that we would approve the guidelines for the proposed Carmel Beach cleanup policy, except for the portion related to driftwood. And our recommendation would be that the city do more research in this particular topic before taking it to city council.
Great.
Would that,
More research with our
Interested,
interested community partners. So I would
partners.
like to see
There you
the
go.
city and Carmel Cares together go talk to the Marine, talk to a few of these people about
Well, not
driftwood
just
specifically.
well, not just Carmel Cares, right? Anyone that has.
Anybody.
an
That
has an
interest.
interest in-
Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, the governing agencies are the NOAA, CDF, W, not a support group.
Of course.
So the governing
We'll
agencies,
we'll talk to the governing agencies.
with our
You
community
just need to find
interested
out more.
partners.
Okay, so do we have something?
I think that was a well.
Did you just
Okay,
put person- did you
I'm gonna make a
write
motion. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the guidelines for the proposed Carmel Beach cleanup policy in order to remove all human source waste and protect natural resources and wildlife, with the exception of the language around driftwood, and recommend that the city make
Research?
additional research, bringing in the constituents and governing bodies before taking this to city council.
I'll second that.
That's all I was looking for.
Very good, very good.
Then a roll call.
I second it, by the way.
Oh, did-
Oh, you seconded it, I didn't hear you. You need to speak into your mic.
Oh, Sarah, you seconded?
No, she
I
didn't.
think Kelly got it.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah. Do it before they change their mind.
Yeah. Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion is passed.
Did we do the sign?
No.
Was
I'm gonna
there
make a
a,
new,
was there a
I'm gonna make a
motion for
new
the sign?
motion. We didn't do the sign motion, did we?
No.
No.
I
We
don't think
didn't,
so.
so yeah, we'll need to do that part now. I just want to remind everybody that it's my anniversary, and so I know to actually get to dinner tonight.
Is
so
it really?
that's
Oh, that's why
We're not going to move along city business on my behalf, but I'm just reminding everybody.
You should have told us at the beginning.
Go ahead, make the thing.
Right through everything.
Okay. No. Hardly. These are important things, and I'm glad we're here doing them together. So we need to make another motion as it relates to the signage. Who would like to put that out there? I think we had a pretty good idea.
Can I just,
Should I say we're going to accept
I
the
make
ugly brown sign?
No,
that could be a
We're
motion.
gonna delay.
we are.
No, we're
I
gonna
just want to
table
say
it.
this one comment because Bob had mentioned after that there isn't a signed policy yet or a task force or a program yet. I don't think there's any harm personally in just accepting this sign, making a motion to receive this sign if just to have it. There is a grant for it, so I don't see there being a big problem in.
I'm just wondering if we receive
Accepting
it,
one-
though, then
one
we
sign.
have to put it up.
It didn't sound like it.
Oh, we do.
If you receive it, you
Yeah.
have
I
to.
think you
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
they put it up. That's
better
part of
to
their
receive
whole
it.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you
Yeah.
receive it, you have to put it up, and then you're kind of locking on it. So I think we
Are we
just,
locked in once?
as
it's-
my motion would be to delay this
Yep.
We could
for
regift
further
it.
We could
Yeah.
delay it.
Delay what?
just
Delay a
delay
decision on the
this
sign.
decision.
Hold on, guys. Let's
second that?
clean this up because I
There's a
don't.
motion to delay a decision on the sign at this meeting
That was by.
by Commissioner Sowers.
Okay.
I'll second it. Or unless-
No, that's
if
either
Commissioners-
or. I'll second, third, fourth.
I believe it was Commissioner Kelly. Mary, thanks again for all your hard work on this. Truly.
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Well,
was
as we
easy.
continue with our orders of business, we have a forester's report for September 23 from
How short can you make
Justin.
it, Justin?
I'll just hit the topics. I don't want to keep Chair Myers on his anniversary.
just kidding.
All right, so just some of the topics we went over in September. We held the special commission meeting where we really dialed in the survey, which was finally getting that out was really big for us. We've included Davies' new status update as an attachment. They're complete with a lot of things. The draft is at this time 50% complete. And the survey went live on September 27th. As of our meeting with Davey last Tuesday, we already had 90 responses. So by the time when we get updated this next Tuesday, it'll probably be way higher than that. The Leadership Carmel Class of 2023 conducted the ribbons cutting ceremony for all the nature play activities at Forest Hill Park. It was a really nice ceremony and everything looks really nice up there. I did a walkthrough with Carmel Cares and Alan Wheat to look at the initial phase of the Ocean Avenue median islands to identify the trees that are poor condition, dying, diseased, that we can get out of there prior to the design of the final landscape. We've been pushing out a lot of tree contract work. We're almost done with the first round, and more stumps and more trees are going to be going out in the next few weeks. We removed dead trees in the Lester Roundtree Garden, which has been on people's radar for several years, I've been told. Our city staff, as well as Town and Country, have been doing citywide landscaping tasks, and Renee Aldama's been working with them really closely to keep them on task, and they've been really good taking care of all the stuff we've given them. We had a water bill issue on a lot of our parks that had some meters that really spiked. Renee went out and assessed all the meters and checked all the irrigation and found a few leaks and fixed them, but I think the majority of it was just high traffic from Car Week, because a lot of them were the bathrooms, like Ocean Avenue, and then the parks. So it was eye-opening, but at least we fixed the ones that were actually leaking. Planted more trees in Forest Hill Park. In the coming, we got quotes and a purchase order to fix rusty parts in the play equipment at Forest Hill Park, and that is coming up soon. We're scheduling that now. And then we've been cleaning up in Forest Hill Park, down trees, and up in Ladera Drive on the southern end of Mission Trail Nature Preserve. We just leave it at that. We can hit the numbers next month. But that's just the highlights. The guys have been out there a lot, and then we had the numbers for the tree removals and tree plantings by the city are a little bit down because the tree care specialist was off for a week taking his kids to Disneyland, and we had some large projects like Forest Hill Park and the downed cypress tree in front of the Madden residence that took a whole crew like several weeks to complete.
Great,
There we
thank
go.
you.
No hands raised.
Let's see, well, commissioners, any questions about the city forester's report? Doesn't look like it. Is there anyone from online that would like to make a comment about it? Anyone in chambers? Doesn't look like it, so thank you. Oh,
I sent one comment. I sent it to Tom. I should probably send it to you, Justin. The survey, great job getting that out. The one at the very end, we ask people their status. Are you a resident and property owner? But there's no follow-up request for people to put an address or anything like that. So it's missing something from a best practices standpoint. It would be very easy to make an adjustment.
Yeah, if I may, we did look into that issue further. That was discussed here at the commission. We talked to some other powers that be and other surveys that have been done, and it was decided by staff to not do that particular question.
So
it's more potentially harmful than beneficial. That was kind of
well, except for the survey is very clearly oriented towards residents and property owners in terms of weighting their perspective more highly. Right. And so it's being the very last question in the survey. It will be interesting when you look at the data that comes in, what percent are in each different bucket.
Right.
It's very easy for that to be a biased and not credible survey. So when
we get into demographic information, it was like we're kind of crossing the line. So
it's not true.
We're on the side of caution.
But I would say surveys are done all the time, and for them to be considered credible, they require that. And requesting a property address would be very, very easy to amend the survey that's online right now, and you'd have probably half or 3/4 of your responses, at least requiring someone to do that.
yeah, I've definitely received some resident feedback about concern that residents aren't necessarily going to be the represented party in the reporting of those surveys. So
well, and I've seen a couple things from a couple of the tree groups where they're saying rush it in, doesn't matter if you're a resident or not. So it is a problem.
and there's been some questions around just for feedback in terms of the survey itself, whether or not there'll be any type of a follow-up survey, and specifically one I imagine we'll have an opportunity to talk about if there could be more of a, I guess we didn't leave any kind of open-ended comments that people could make.
At the end, there was one.
There is a space for that?
Yes.
Okay, then maybe there's one person had complained to me that there wasn't, and perhaps they just had a difficulty figuring out how to use it, I'm not sure.
Could be. There was some survey fatigue, and there was a percentage that didn't get to the end.
That's true. There's some people dropped out in the middle of it. Yeah.
Got it, well, thanks. So
are you counting the incompletes in your data analysis?
I don't believe so. I think it only gets to I think that, but they said, they made the point where they might have didn't realize how long it was going to be, and then they got a little daunted and like, oh, I thought I could do this at lunch, and then they go home and really think about it, and they said that it might average out towards the end because people might come back to it, but I don't think it counts unless you hit submit at the end.
Who's counting them, by the way?
Well, it's through SurveyMonkey, but Davey is taking all the data.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
No, we need to have local people doing it. Yeah. That's really not good.
Well, the data itself, I imagine, is all is available for.
Well, except there's the spoken.
We're not going to change the data. So we're not going to change the data once it comes in. So it's the data's the data, and they're the ones writing the plan.
There's the written part.
Yeah, there's the paper surveys need to be input, and
We're taking those.
and that should be monitored.
Yeah, we're taking those. The
Right.
Davey doesn't get those. Those come to us. This is.
But those
I'm
should
talking
be,
about just the.
but those should
online.
be input into SurveyMonkey. If you want to do the proper data analysis.
And I believe they are, but that's not data. That's not Davey. That's us, and we're gonna get those submitted to the library, the post office, submitted to just a city hall or public works. But you can pick them up at the 4 places.
You know, it's interesting. There's only one sheet available here, right? I noticed this afternoon, so they're not being kept out very well, and there were none at the post office when I went.
Okay,
4
stock
different
more.
times.
We pick
can
up
print
on
more.
Fridays, and we're gonna restock
print
on
more.
Fridays. So that's
Yep.
good that many surveys have been picked up.
Okay, we can
So-
make copies.
Not necessarily.
We'll restock them tomorrow.
And you have access to the SurveyMonkey data, correct?
Yeah.
It's not as if it's only Davies in control of the information.
No, it's
Got
just
it.
the same way with the inventory.
Yeah,
We're paying them.
I think
for-
that at least provides, that's the reassurance. I think
So-
maybe that was the question, like there's
Let
concern.
Bob finish
Just
up.
to, I'm sensitive to your anniversary.
No, don't be, that's fine, we're
but
fine. It's 27 years, listen. She's probably happy I'm not home.
No, you're on camera. He was just kidding.
Love you, honey. She was here earlier.
So,
I told her, I'm like, I got a Forest and Beach Commission. She's like, oh, really? That's convenient.
So I just want to make sure I understood correctly. You're saying that the city staff decided to not request an address. You considered it and you decided not to make people put in an address confirming they were a resident of the city.
And I believe, yes,
Yeah.
and there was other demographic information, I believe, at the end.
No, there was none. There was
Tom-
standard.
I don't know exactly, but yes, we did talk to a few other people at the city who's done surveys, and they said they couldn't, we're a government agency, we're not a private entity, so they said, you're talking about gathering sensitive information.
Not
So
an
we have to be
address isn't
careful.
sensitive for a resident. It's actually you're verifying that somebody is a resident when they claim they are.
For what it's worth, there are some questions that say if you are a resident or not a resident, we get
Well,
to check
that's
the boxes.
the one at the end.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
I think we'll be okay. Hopefully. We'll see.
maybe.
Thanks, Justin. But then, looks like the last order of business
Right.
is the Public Works Director's report.
I was going to read all 5 pages.
Looking forward to seeing if he's going to bring the same
In
passion
slow
to this
motion.
report he's making.
No, I'll talk faster than you can probably hear, because Your Honor, I know you want to get out of
Your
here.
Honor.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Here we go.
Seriously, first of all, let me apologize for my abrupt behavior earlier. I am concerned about that, the beach trash policy. We're past that now, but there's sometimes that you just have to keep going. We can't beat things to death over and over and over. So hopefully I didn't cross the line too bad, but I apologize for being abrupt. Back to business. City Council meetings last week, October 2nd, the City Council, I guess, reformed the Climate Committee. If you recall, the Climate Committee was in effect for 3 years, although there's a long gap in COVID. Council adopted the Climate Action Plan and Climate Adaptation Plan. The first spin-off was this coastal engineering study that we've seen some of the tasks, and there'll be more coming. So anyway, the Climate Committee is reformed. They're not meeting monthly, they're meeting as needed. And it's not 8 people, it's 4 people. So that's, and Mary and Bilsey will be the liaison to that committee. They are going to be, in the near future, reviewing tasks 1 and 2, which was the beach sand movement and the coastal infrastructure condition assessment. So they'll be seeing that as another way to get the word out. That's it for council. Capital improvement projects. The Mission Trail Nature Preserve, tank, pump house,
Finally got the.
out. They are out, they're gone. The power pole is also removed. And the last but not least is the well decommissioning, and they're doing the submittal, the paperwork to get that buttoned up as well. So they knocked everything out in a week, which was fantastic. We had to move one dusky-footed wood rat nest next to the tank, so to allow them to get to the tank. But that's done. Mission Trail Nature Preserve on the south end by Rio Road, there's 3 drainage improvement projects. We have been working with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Service for a year, over a year. We finally got their blessing. Well, I wouldn't say that we got their blessing. We got them to accept our permit application, which triggers a 60-day clock for them to approve our permit. So that's, we already had the Army Corps of Engineers permit. We already had the Water Quality Control Board permit. Fish and Wildlife Service took over a year to get that permit. Once we have that last permit, then a couple of months we'll be going out to bid on that project as well. Okay, so improve the drainage down at the south end of the Mission Trail. And the other one was, in the November council meeting, they'll be asked to approve an amendment with a consultant called Wallace Group to launch the coastal repairs project at $250,000, which soon to be $350,000. So that process gets started in November. I'm sure that will be a slam dunk. A climate action adaptation. We already talked about the committee being reformed. The task 1 and 2 were already presented here at the commission. Task 5 was to review the local coastal program and related policies, although not the beach trash policy. And they submitted a report to staff that's been reviewed. So anyway, they're more than 60% done. They're about 75% done with phase 1. And looked like we're gonna get a green light for the $500,000 from the California Coastal Commission to go right into phase 2 without missing.
For what?
I'm sorry? That's all the study, but it's to keep going. But that's good news. Volunteers. Public Works gave the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve some lumber, and they installed a wooden footbridge over the muddy bog on the Doolittle Trail, which has been a pesky bog. We tried all kinds of different things, but the wood seems to be holding up pretty good. Shout out to Carmel Cares out at Scenic Road near 13th Avenue. There was a faucet, but not a hose bib. So they replumbed it. They put a hose bib out there so they could get access for watering the landscaping along Scenic Pathway. And as soon as they did that, the system clogged up. So they had to fix like a water valve and a regulator, and all permitted and all approved and everything. Anyway, that was just recently completed. I'm sorry?
Did a bunch of large driftwood get in there?
It's a rack.
Come on.
It's a rack. It's a little bit of rack. I think that's it on that. And then miscellaneous. At Forest Hill Park, we continue to do some upgrades. We refurbished the sink. It's an indestructible sink that works again. We installed LED lighting. We replaced corroded drinking fountain heads at all the city locations. So when you go to drink water, it looks more appealing. We installed, for those who were, I think Commissioner Mickey was at the ribbon cutting.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you saw the 220 feet of new post and rail fence on the west
I
side.
did see that. Yeah,
So
that was good.
that came out really nice. There's talk about doing the same type of thing at the North Dunes. I think Mary mentioned that along Ocean Avenue and along San Antonio. So we are seeking donations. I'll be in the Friday letter tomorrow. If we get a little bit more money, we can go forward on that one. And I think I mentioned this already. There was 3 dead seals washed up on the south end of Carmel Beach, one after the other. Not quite sure why. Got some complaints, including a sign that had my phone number on it. Call this number. This is a rotten, stinky, kind of like the brackish water. Rotten, stinky carcass. Public Works never picks this up. call Bob's phone number.
Beach policy says to leave them alone.
That's a good one.
Not remember.
It's natural. So it turns out there was, no, sir, that was a different dead seal in the same spot, right next to it. So that was a very odd coincidence. But anyway, that's all I have, Your Honor. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions for our illustrious director?
I had just one that I got a report that it would be helpful if we're not going to put sand at 9th and 10th on the stairs, can we close them down? Someone fell the other day and broke their leg on the 9th stairs.
I'd be more than happy to shut them down.
Just shut them down. I mean, if we're not going to put sand where the riprap is,
okay.
People are falling. Let's just close them off. I just think it's too dangerous. But someone did. I hope they don't come back at us. But they did hurt themselves.
Happy to do that. We have the lumber. We're ready to go. We can do that in a short period of time.
That's your call, but I'm just saying someone got hurt again.
I've heard this before. We've shut them down. People knock over the plywood. They crawl over it with dogs.
They do. Yeah.
And they ignore it.
But as a city,
why don't we put
come
sand?
down.
Why don't we put sand there?
There's a lot of sand. That would be a lot of sand. But anyway.
And we're gonna be getting storms that are gonna run up to that level anyway. So I think at this point, I agreed that people climb over it, but at least as a city, we've warned them: don't come down these stairs. If you do it at your own risk, it kind of washes our.
It's at your own risk for all the stairs, for that matter. But
true.
Yeah.
But
yes. It is bad at the bottom.
It's bad. It really is. We've got to do something.
Any other questions from commissioners about the report? Let's take it to the general public. Let's see here. Anybody in chambers? Doesn't look like it. How about anybody online?
It's your wife.
You missed
Doesn't look like it, so we'll close all that, and then future agenda items. Anything that you guys would like to have consideration for?
Well, the only thing I want to put on it is I still think we talked about as a commission of giving our recommendation formally in a commission setting that we believe there's an emergency at the beach for infrastructure repair. And we have not, I don't think we've, as a combined commission, pushed that up as a recommendation to the city council.
Good.
And I think if we could do that as an agenda item at our next meeting and just make that statement, I'd like to get it on the public record that we have a commission agreed to that, if we do. I think we do what we do.
Is there anything else for future agenda items?
The bylaws? Of course, the beach bylaws will be next month.
We did have an opportunity to have this meeting and think about those, so prepare to have that.
At the risk, Driftwood, a follow-up on the Driftwood conversation, because I'm not sure when they're going to city council, but it would be helpful to have a.
And the only thing I would add to the thing with the what would we say, the guideline, what were we talking about?
Guideline, policy guideline.
Not the guideline, but not the beach policy, but the.
Signs?
Sign?
No, what were we just talking about?
Bylaws?
The bylaws.
Bylaws.
I'm gonna swing back, a year back and go, where are we with the legal language about the Forest and Beach Commission's power of decision making, and that we've never gotten a legal language of that. Is that wrapped around those issues?
No, it's wrapped around finishing the urban forest master plan and then doing the tree and shrub ordinance, which we have two of them, and they're both not good.
Oh, that's
Yes.
You're talking about legal time.
If you recall, Commissioner, about 2 years ago, before we got the grant from CAL FIRE to do the urban forest master plan, we worked with the city attorney's office to update. Right now we have two ordinances. They're both called trees and shrubs in two different chapters of the city code. They're both incomplete and they're both different.
So this really has to do about our ability to
Right.
penalties.
So we started
and
working.
fines and
We started working on that, and I did announce hey, we're going to talk about what. And I think at the time there was a couple of cases where developers were coming in and cutting down all the trees indiscriminately, and what can the commission find, what's, you know, what authority do you have, if any? So we started working on that. Then we got the grant. We said, we went to the city council. They said, okay, there's no reason to, didn't want to have new tree ordinances, then do the urban forest master plan, and then change the ordinances again. So those have been intentionally on hold.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not forgotten.
Okay, but that's really, really good.
So hurry up, Justin, on your
Yeah, that's tied into the ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there aren't any additional future agenda items for consideration, and just so you know, there'll be a consideration at some point in the upcoming month of what gets added to the agenda or not. So I think then we get to call it. Thank you much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy anniversary.
Oh, thanks.
Kelly, do you need to get home?
I do.